Part 62. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 636. Kaka Kaka. In a dim corner, a man was curled up, his hair disheveled like a wild beast, gnawing at the raw chicken in his hand. It was the first time that he saw someone who could turn himself into such a beast. Even when he came closer, the man's messy long hair revealed a threatening look, which made Su Tong couldn't help but want to take a closer look at him. Be clearer. See clearly his movements, the changes in his eyes, and the twisted sense of coordination in his body and limbs. Ah! It seemed that Su Tong was getting too close. The man suddenly dropped the chicken in his hand and rushed towards Su Tong. The speed was so fast that even Su Tong's dark vision couldn't catch it. He could only rely on his feelings to make quick movements. In front of him, he saw sharp fingers spread out, revealing dark nails. As soon as he stretched out his hand, many afterimages appeared in front of Su Tong's eyes, making it difficult to distinguish the true from the false. Xianyuan shield. The sharp claws hit the Xianyuan shield, and a huge impact came, causing the Xianyuan shield to make a huge roar. Su Tong was shocked. Such power has already surpassed that of a martial arts master like Gu Zibai. The huge impact also activated the Insha brand on the Xianyuan shield, and large swaths of ice burst out from the Xianyuan shield. However, that man not only behaved like a beast, but also predicted danger as sensitively as a beast. Faced with the sudden stab of ice, he actually jumped onto the roof with his own speed. At the same time, the body seemed to ignore gravity, hanging upside down, with two pairs of eyes staring at him without any emotion. This guy sees me as prey. This look was like a cheetah staring at its prey. Ha ha. Suddenly the man let out a strange cry and rushed forward, his sharp claws protruding out. It was as if there was a divine fire burning, and the divine light was so dazzling that it made it difficult to open one's eyes. When Su Tong saw this, he was still using Xianyuan shield, and the cyan shield light covered the space in front of him with dazzling frost. Rumble. When the two collided for the second time, a huge roar broke out. The surrounding cells could not withstand such an impact, and they burst apart and exploded, sending rocks and wood chips through the air and shooting in all directions. Help! A stone flew past Old Sun's earlobe. Under the stinging pain, Old Sun seemed to have finally gained control of his body. With a scream, he turned around and ran away, crawling on the ground. Bang bang bang. Facing the Xianyuan shield's block, the man waved his fists like a madman. In an instant, thousands of fists hit the Xianyuan shield like a heavy rain. But a moment later, with an explosion of crack, the Xianyuan shield was shattered. After all, this is a dungeon, not a river, so the defensive power of Xianyuan shield and the effectiveness of Yanshu are naturally greatly reduced. However, at the moment when the Xianyuan shield exploded, countless icicles in front of him exploded into pieces and turned into mist. The man was slightly dazed after losing his target, and then he bent down sharply to avoid the strange hand that flew out of the white mist in front of him. It was just followed by countless tentacles in the white mist, and they grasped the man tightly. I saw a fat figure emerging from behind the white mist, and his huge body pressed tightly against him. The man waved his fists wildly, punching holes one after another in his body. Immediately, Su Tong's cold snort came from the darkness. Explode. Boom. Just as he climbed up the steps, Old Sun was instantly thrown away by the shockwave coming from behind. He only felt a burning sting on his back and had no idea what was happening. After a while, I looked back and saw that the dungeon behind me had collapsed. Dong dong dong. Alarm bells rang for a moment, and the explosion immediately caused chaos in the entire prison. Problem occurs. Lucy AI and the four of them looked at each other in the cell. I saw the defenders wearing armor rushing towards the direction of the explosion. Seeing this, Lucy AI glanced at the iron rope in front of him and kicked it up. He didn't kick open the iron rope, but instead kicked the door railing off. As soon as he walked out of the cell, he saw fire surging behind him, and there were killing sounds from time to time. "Go and see," Lucy AI said, and was about to follow. "Senior brother Lou," senior brother said that once something happens, we need to leave as soon as possible. Seeing that Lucy AI was about to rush over with the guards, the other three junior brothers hurriedly stopped him. "What are you afraid of? We are so timid. When have we in Hunshan prison ever been afraid of such demons and evil ways?" Lucy AI spoke righteously and was about to rush over to help. As a result, my face suddenly felt hot, and when I wiped it with my hand, it felt sticky. When I put my hand down again, I saw that it was blood. Tick tock tock. There was more and more blood in the sky, sometimes mixed with pieces of meat. A head flew from the front and landed at Lucy AI's feet. Looking at the soldier's head, Lucy AI couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth, swallowed a mouthful of spit, then lowered his head and walked back to the cell. "I didn't bring a change of clothes, come in first, let's observe." Ah! A roar that sounded like humans and animals came from the ruins. The guards who kept rushing up were beaten back steadily, but the man who looked like a madman rushed into the middle without fear of swords, and rampaged around under the siege of these guards. Even though the sword slashed at his body, causing fire to fly everywhere, it didn't even cut through the man's skin. But the man's sharp claws easily tore through their armor. His hands reached out, grabbed a soldier's chest and raised him high above his head. Puff puff. I saw heavy shadows of claws. Each blow would disembowel the soldier, and with a shake of the claws, it would tear the man into pieces alive. On the tower, Zhao Peng saw it clearly. He turned around and cupped his hands to the master on the side. "Master, I'll deal with him." Gu Piwen glanced at Zhao Peng and nodded. "Go ahead, this man practiced the Vajra Kung Fu, but unfortunately it was broken once. If you hit his dragon bone 3 inches, you can break his Vajra body. Promise." Upon hearing this, Zhao Peng turned around and jumped down from the tower, his toes in the air and his green shirt fluttering in the wind, as if he were a true immortal descending to earth. Nai Haitang, who was standing next to Gu Piwen, was distracted for a moment with his eyes flashing. However, Nai Haitang did not notice that Gu Piwen was looking at her from the corner of his eye. Seeing her young girl Huaishun's appearance, she couldn't help but secretly sigh in her heart. "It's hard to go against destiny, it's destiny, Haitang. It's not that master won't save you, it's just that it's hard. Don't be afraid, I'm here to help you and the others, and the monster will die." Zhao Peng descended from the sky and used his unique skill, the Kinkan Mahamudra, to buzz. With a palm wave, a palm print was like a majestic mountain, falling through the air, like Mount Tai pressing down from the top, suppressing it. Seeing such a big hand covering the sky, all the guards below became numb. With this slap, they might all be turned into pulp. Facing the suppressing big hand, the man let out a loud roar, his long hair standing on end, and a bright golden light suddenly rose from his blood-stained body, and a mutilated fruit actually appeared behind him. The fruit was golden, but it was incomplete, as if someone had taken a bite out of thin air. But even if the Taoist fruit was incomplete, the man was still a master of the Taoist realm. He opened his hands and faced the attack. His fists were burning with golden fire, and he punched through the big hand. However, the true energy flowing in Zhao Peng's body seemed to never be exhausted. He kept waving his hands and took pictures of 13 heaven and earth handprints in succession. This scene made everyone below dumbfounded, and Lucy AI even looked at it with envy on his face. This is the master's unique skill. But before he could admire him for any longer, he was pulled by 3 junior brothers and ran out desperately, shouting as he ran, "Senior brother, we are still down there." Not only Lucy AI and the other 3 were scurrying around in panic, but so were the guards below. Old Sun was old, and he had never seen such a scene in his life. His legs were so weak that he couldn't use his strength. He could only use his hands together, lying on the ground and running forward like a dog. The gods fight, causing disaster to the fish in the pond. They even couldn't help but secretly pray in their hearts, hoping that the lunatic in the water prison could last longer. Huh. At this time, Lao Sun was suddenly blocked by a boot. He looked up and said, "Open your head." You. Zhang Laotu lowered his head and looked at Lao Sun expressionlessly. He slowly knelt down and patted Lao Sun on the shoulder. "Go home quickly. I won't go to your daughter's wedding tomorrow." As Zhang Laotu said, he wanted to jump over him and continue walking forward. However, Lao Sun hugged Zhang Laotu's legs at this moment. "Zhang Laotu, don't go inside, run away. We can't control this fight between gods." Seeing this, Zhang Laotu frowned and his voice gradually turned cold. "Let go. No, open your head and leave quickly." Click. A mouthful of blood spurted out from Lao Sun's throat, and he raised his head to look at the prison head in front of him with eyes wide open. But Zhang Laotu just raised his head expressionlessly and stepped down hard. Click. There was a sound of bones breaking, and Old Sun was already lying on the ground without making a sound. Zhang Laotu remained expressionless and even kicked his body away casually. Then he clasped his hands and placed them flat on his chest. "The world is like a sea of suffering. Motuo came to the world, and all the gods and Mokos are the only one who is supreme." Accompanied by the chanting of strange scriptures, Zhang Laotu's face was full of righteousness, replaced by a hint of evil. He raised his head and looked directly at the tower, shouting, "Gu Pei Yuan, I'm back." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 638. There was a long roar, but the sound caused changes in the sky. The sky was suddenly covered with dark clouds. It was originally dark, but now it was even darker. Boom. Seeing the dark clouds above his head, Nai Haitang couldn't help but take a step back and hide behind Gu Piwen. "Master. Don't be afraid, he can't do anything to us." Gu Piwen pinched a grape and threw it in his mouth. He stretched out his arms lazily and yawned. "Congratulations, congratulations. I haven't seen you for 3 years. Congratulations to my fellow Taoist, Qian Long, for coming out of the abyss and keeping the clouds clear to see the bright moon. Gu Pei Yuan, what I am today is all thanks to you. If it weren't for you 3 years ago, how could I be like this?" Zhang Laotu took off his official hat and his long hair was messy on his shoulders. He talked about the old accounts from 3 years ago. 3 years ago, the great monk Zhenju of Xingjiao Temple passed away, leaving behind 3 relics. It was supposed to be his opportunity, but Gu Piwen intervened, not only cutting off his opportunity, but also almost costing him his life. If he hadn't been destined to die, drifting along the river and being rescued from the river by an old fisherman, I'm afraid he would have been buried in hell by now. He was lucky enough to save his life, but he fell into the abyss. Not only did his luck plummet to the bottom, but he also had to face 3 murders, each time full of dangers. Fortunately, he survived. Now that the hidden dragon is out of the abyss and the puzzling star is on duty, the world is so big that no one can kill him. Luji, you are obsessed with cultivation. It is not easy for a hidden dragon to get out of the abyss. Don't forget that there are regrets for being a strong dragon. Gu Piwen scolded coldly. The hidden dragon emerged from the abyss and soared into the sky. No one in the world could kill Luji, not even the old heavenly master from Longhu Mountain. It's not that they are not as strong as him, but if they want to kill Luji forcefully, they will definitely have to fight with the sky. The weather and luck will be tilted in his favor, or even worse, giving him more opportunities. If you ask, if Lu Ji is an evil person who practices evil skills that go against heaven, how can God protect him when he is blind? That's the problem. The way of heaven is ruthless and treats all things as stupid dogs. Good and evil monsters are all divided by humans, So what does it have to do with heaven? To put it bluntly, in the eyes of God, good and evil are the same. As long as you see a group of ants fighting, you won't care which one is better. Which is bad. Even if you are in a bad mood, just urinate and send them to the west together. Because of this, Gu Peiyuan would not take action against Lu Ji. However, Gu Peiyuan's voice changed and he said directly, King Long has regrets. These 4 words could destroy Lu Ji's luck invisibly. At their level, heaven and man are already one, and their words follow the law, and every word affects the energy of all things. Gu Peiyuan's words fell, affecting the changes in the surrounding situation. For a moment, rolling thunder broke through the sky, intending to shake off the haze above the head and reveal the sun and moon again. Sure enough, Lu Ji's expression suddenly changed slightly after he finished speaking, and he could already feel that there seemed to be a subtle change in his luck. It's so weird, it's a bit like Jinman's magic. Under the ruins, a pair of eyes quietly observed everything going on outside. It was Su Tong who had just exploded and disappeared. At this moment, the cell collapsed, and the resentment in the cell was suppressed by the fresh air outside. He took the opportunity to open his life icon and watched silently. Seeing such a magic trick, he couldn't help but secretly marvel. Immediately, he turned his eyes and looked at Zhao Peng and the man under the dungeon. At this moment, the two were already fighting inextricably. Although the man was a master of the Dao realm, his Dao fruit was incomplete and he was unconscious. He was slapped to the ground by Zhao Peng with the big handprint of Qinqin, like 1,000 mountains, weighing him down and unable to move. Upon seeing this, Zhao Peng immediately summoned a long sword and stabbed 3 inches straight into the man's back spine. Gu Peiyuan said before that this person practiced the Vajra Dharma, and his body was like a Vajra. But the bad thing was that the power was broken once by someone, and the Tao fruit was incomplete. He only needed to stab the person's spine 3 inches to kill him. Although the man lost his mind, when he saw the long sword stabbing him, he instinctively sensed the danger. When his body could not move, he took the initiative to face Zhao Peng's sword light. He only turned slightly sideways and held the stabbing tightly with his arms to grow it. Sword. Zhao Peng had the intention to draw his sword, but the opponent's body was like a diamond, and the long sword was placed under his armpits. No matter how hard he tried, he could not move. When the man saw this, he twisted his waist, and a dark force came over him, and he ran straight towards Zhao Peng along the sword's edge. When Zhao Peng saw this, he knew something was wrong, but he didn't dare to let go. He could only use his inner strength and flick his wrist. Buzz. Suddenly the sword buzzed, and the sword gradually began to bend. For a moment, the two of them were in a wrestling position. Seeing that the two of them could not tell the winner for a while, Su Tong shifted his attention without interest, nibbling melon seeds, and looked at Lu Ji and Gu Peiyuan on the other side. Outsiders couldn't tell, but Su Tong used his life icon to see the overwhelming secrets surging around the two of them. It is said that enlightenment is a heavenly being. Every move and every thought can affect everything. This is true. Gu Peiyuan's aura triggered thunder and lightning, seeming to blast away the haze above his head. Old guy, if you want to ruin my luck, you have to risk your life. Lu Ji snorted coldly and snatched it away with one kick. The whole cell shook, dark clouds surged above his head, and a fishy wind blew up from the ground. The fishy wind surged, and the resentment in the entire dungeon soared into the sky with this fishy wind. Su Tong also had to close his eyes immediately. The resentment in this place was too heavy. I don't know how many people were here to hold their grievances. But even if he closed his eyes, Su Tong could still see dense blood-red stains in front of his eyes. These stains are bright red and dazzling, and they are crooked, like scratches made by fingers, twisted together to write a word of injustice. What an injustice! The fishy wind roared, and everyone seemed to hear countless angry screams in the wind. Suddenly there was a burst of thunder, and there was no sound for a moment. When Gu Peiwen saw this, he couldn't help but frowned. The resentment in this prison was too heavy, and it had already broken through his own energy. Seeing dark clouds covering the sun, his prophecy was about to fail. Trouble. Gu Peiyuan frowned slightly. This prophecy technique focuses on making a prophecy come true in one word. Once successful, it would be equivalent to establishing a prophecy on Lu Ji. It may not be noticeable now, but it will definitely come true in the future. But if it fails, no matter who uses the technique from now on, this prophecy will be invalid and can no longer be used on Lu Ji. It seems that you are well prepared. Gu Peiwen squinted his eyelids, seeing that the prophecy was about to expire. He couldn't help but have murderous intentions in his heart. 3 years ago you, an old guy, took advantage of my unpreparedness and beat me almost to death. How could I not guard against your prophecy skills? I have long heard that you, an old thief, pursued the owner of the 6 Arts Hall back then. If it doesn't work, the prophecy will be made, and the owner of the Liuyi Hall, MRSU, is still alone. How could I be unprepared? Lu Ji sneered and revealed the scandal that Gu Peiyuan had done back then. This matter is rarely discussed nowadays, but 3 years ago this old thief Gu Peiyuan almost killed himself. How could Lu Ji not guard against him? That's why I chose to live in seclusion in this smelly prison, precisely to guard against this person's prophecies. Now that things have happened, Gu Peiyuan, if you still want to make a prophecy, I will risk your life to fill it. It depends on whether you are willing to let it go. Lu Ji looked up to the sky and laughed. Master. Nai Haitang held Gu Peiwen's arm tightly, and Li Xinliang knelt on the ground. Master, you must not do this. Gu Peiwen lowered his head and was speechless for a moment. His round, fat face was temporarily hidden in the haze, making it difficult to see the changes in his expression. At the other corner of the city wall, a group of black-clad divine guards were silently staring in the direction of Gu Peiyuan. 2 of them were holding pens and recording everything that happened in front of them. Commander, do you think Gu Peiyuan would give up his life? Wu Fan stood beside the leader Luo Hu and asked quietly. Luo Hu shook his head. He didn't know, so he just said, it's difficult. A life in exchange for a prophecy. Whether the prophecy will come true or not is open to question, but is Peiyuan, a man who has been a Taoist man for many years in ancient times, willing to trade his own life for it? If he doesn't change, then how should he deal with the promise he made before the saint? If you don't change, you are disloyal. You will eat the emperor's salary. The only thing you can do to be loyal to the emperor is to relieve the saint's worries. It doesn't matter if you lose one life. Isn't this the duty of Hunshan's supervisor? Otherwise, how can we supervise the 3 religions and control the different schools in the world? Even if he exchanged his life for just a prophecy, it was still a prophecy that reassured the saint. As for whether it came true or not, the saint would not care. After a moment, Gu Peiyuan stood up and said, it's time and destiny. I failed to kill you back then, so this is the cause and effect. Since you want a prophecy, I will do as you wish. Master. Nai Haitang's expression changed drastically and he threw himself into Gu Peiyuan's arms. Master, no, it's not worth it. Silly boy, it doesn't matter whether it's worth it or not. It's just fate. It's a pity that I have just found a destined person. When you go back, let him go. As he spoke, Gu Peiwen touched Nai Haitang's forehead affectionately and said earnestly, Haitang, you are destined to suffer 3 calamities, be careful. At the end of Gu Peiwen's words, his voice suddenly disappeared, and Li Xinliang couldn't hear clearly what the master said. Gu Peiyuan, if you want to die, you should die soon. Don't keep chattering there endlessly. Lu Ji urged, as if he was just waiting for you, Gu Peiyuan, to kill me. As if he didn't care at all what consequences this would have on his own fate. Snored. Gu Peiwen snorted coldly and pushed Nai Haitang away from his arms. In this case, I will sacrifice my life to accompany you. As he spoke, Gu Peiyuan's body was filled with energy. Thunder and lightning flashed all over his body, and a pair of golden coupons appeared behind him, a divine prophecy picture. This is exactly what Gu Peiyuan achieved enlightenment. Today he will risk his life and go out, and his prophecy will come true. Ha 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 ha, old thief, you have been fooled. How could Lu Ji really let Gu Peiyuan succeed? Since he was a hidden dragon coming out of the abyss, he must take advantage of this great fortune to ride on the wind, so how could he let Gu Peiyuan succeed so easily? Immediately, Lu Ji's figure suddenly moved, and he came to Zhao Peng's side in an instant. Get away! Lu Ji ignored Zhao Peng and slapped him away. Then his fingers, like lightning, reached into the mist above the man's head and grabbed the golden body Dao fruit. I've raised you for 3 years, now it's your turn to repay me. After saying that, Lu Ji pulled out the Dao fruit, opened his mouth and swallowed it. He's crazy. Everyone was shocked by the scene and swallowed other people's Dao fruit alive. This was the first time even Luo Hu and others had heard of such a thing. Ah! When the Dao fruit was picked, the man let out a scream, fell to the ground and began to twitch all over. But it didn't end there. Lu Ji made a hand with his fingers, pinched out a drop of blood, and flicked it on the man's head. The blood droplets spread out and turned into a strange blood curse, covering the man's body. The blood curse took shape, and resentment surged throughout the cell, penetrating into the man's body like several torrents. Within a moment, the man's body began to twist uncoordinatedly, and his mouth kept opening wide. In an instant, the skin and flesh on his face relaxed, and even rested on the ground, making his mouth extremely large. Love, hate, and parting are painful in the world, and injustice and hatred kill nameless ghosts. This is all karma. Ha 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 ha. Lu Ji looked up to the sky and laughed. Roar. In a moment, thousands of evil spirits gathered and spat out from the man's mouth. In a moment, it was like a black torrent, rushing straight into the sky. No. The evil magic ghost covers the sky. Gu Peiwen's face changed drastically, he formed seals with his hands, and when he waved, he saw lightning flashing from the sky, like a sword that pierced the sky, striking at these evil ghosts. Thunder and lightning are originally the awe-inspiring righteousness between heaven and earth, the roar of heaven. As evil ghosts encounter thunder and lightning, they will be instantly shattered into powder and will never be reincarnated. But it is very different at this moment. Lu Ji worked hard for 3 years here pretending to be a prisoner for today. He even imprisoned Yang Zhan, the bandit leader who broke into Yuyang 3 years ago, in a water prison. This was not to torture him, but because of his destiny. Unique, all horoscopes are yin, use him as a counterweight to open the door to evil spirits through the evil spirits in the prison. For a moment, billowing evil spirits soared into the sky. Amidst the thunder and lightning, they gathered into a dark cloud and covered the sky again. For a moment, they were full of resentment, unable to be dispersed by thunder or penetrated by lightning. This was the ghost covering the sky. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 639. Not good. Luo Hu looked at the ghost clouds covering the sky and couldn't help but frown. Sacrifice to the god sword. Promise. Wu Fan and others' hearts skipped a beat when they heard this. They didn't expect to actually touch the thing, but they didn't dare to slack off. They saw several Shinwu guards quickly carrying a large box tied with iron chains from behind. It was more like a dark wooden coffin than a box. There are 28 talismans neatly affixed to the box. As everyone tore the talisman apart, they slowly turned the gears under the box, click, click, click. The wooden boards on the box slowly opened toward both sides, and after opening, a long sword rose from inside. Wu Fan and others all held their breath for a moment. When the Shinwu guards were first established, the saint gave them 3 town objects. One is the Shenyuan Tianji mirror. It is said that this mirror can break through the world's magic and illuminate people's luck. The second piece is the Juyeo astrolabe. It is said that it is divided into 9 parts and is controlled by 9 commanders. This is how the names of the 9 commanders come from. The third item is this bronze sword, the national sword Tiank. It is said that in order to stabilize the country, the saint rebuilt the Juding to serve as a country. This sword was cast together with the Juding, and was an artifact that accompanied the fate of the country. Even Wu Fan, with such a prominent status, has never seen the true face of this sword, and now it is time to open his eyes. Luo Hu stepped forward and placed his hand on the hilt of the sword. Zizi. Just as his palm touched the hilt of the sword, a burst of green smoke rose from his hand, and his palm immediately made a burning sound. Commander. Wu Fan was shocked, but was stopped by Luo Hu. How can a person control the most important weapon of the country? As he spoke, Luo Hu slowly raised his sword. Gu Pei Yuan, if you are willing to risk your life, I, Luo Hu, will use my hand to help you. After the words fell, Luo Hu swung the long sword in his hand, without any moves, just a slash. Suddenly, the heaven and earth trembled, and in the dark, it seemed as if a huge sword slashed through the sky. Suddenly, there was a heart-rending scream in the ghost cloud, and thousands of evil ghosts dispersed in a panic. Wow! The sky was filled with haze and was suddenly torn open by this sword, revealing a huge hole. Ding! With one strike of the sword, Luo Hu's hand had turned into charcoal, and he was unable to hold the sword in his hand. Fortunately, at this moment, several other divine guards immediately stepped forward, holding the iron box, and put the divine sword back into the iron box. Luo Hu glanced at his hand and gently knocked it on the city wall. Boom! This hand fell to pieces on the ground like burned cinders. Seeing that his suppression technique was broken, Lu Ji's expression changed slightly. He looked sideways in the direction of Luo Hu and the others and sneered, "What a national weapon, Tiank, but it's a pity that you can only wield a sword. Lu Ji, this sword is enough." On the city tower, Gu Pei Yuan saw the ghost covering clouds scattering, formed a seal with his hands, opened his mouth and bit the tip of his tongue, spit out a blood arrow and shot straight into the sky. When he stretched out his hand, thousands of thunders gathered on his fingertips. Using thousands of thunders as his pen and his own essence and blood as his ink, Gu Pei Yuan's eyes widened, and as he waved his hand, a line of large characters fell on the golden scroll above his head. The hidden dragon emerges from the abyss, but in the end, the dragon has regrets. Each word of the iron pen and the silver hook caused the celestial phenomena to fall, directly heading towards the land to stop the luck. It's like the sky has carved a life mark in Lu Ji's destiny. However, Lu Ji seemed to have accepted this frankly. Faced with his own turbulent fate, he was not touched at all. Something's wrong. Su Tong, a melon eater hiding in the ruins, saw the pride inadvertently showing in the corner of Lu Ji's eyes, and suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart. This leader of Motuo has worked hard to operate here for many years, and he cannot just accept his fate like this. Could it be? Thinking of this, Su Tong didn't care much. He opened his life icon, glanced at it, and his expression changed drastically. I saw that after thousands of evil spirits in the sky were frightened away, they did not disappear. Instead, they were like a flood of water, rolling towards Yuyang City. This bastard is going to use the entire Yuyang City to back him up. Seeing this, Su Tong couldn't help but curse Lu Ji in his heart for being so crazy. So many evil spirits pounced on him, and he was determined to turn the entire Yuyang City into a hell on earth. Thinking of this, Su Tong's heart sank, and he knew that he could no longer eat melons. He glanced at the 2 unheeded coins in the prop book and sighed in his heart, sure enough, without wealth to protect you, even if it's Ming Chao, it won't keep you warm. As he spoke, Su Tong began to make preparations. Not good. Naturally, it was not just Su Tong who discovered the problem. Gu Piwen, who had just written the prophecy, also noticed something was wrong, and his round face turned pale for a moment. Lu Ji, you are so heartbroken. Gu Peiyuan, who was sitting on the city wall, pointed at Lu Ji angrily, you can just come to me for the hatred between us. Why do you need to involve the entire people of Yuyang? Huh, what kind of hatred? You are the supervisor of the imperial court, and I am a demon and evil way. It is only natural that you want to kill me. I never feel that I have any hatred against you. The people of the city should have taken refuge under me, Mochua. Now you are about to die at the mouth of an evil ghost, so what does it have to do with me? It is obviously you who dispersed the ghost cloud, so what does it have to do with me? Lu Ji raised his head, pretending to be dumbfounded, as if these things had nothing to do with him. You. Gu Piwen's eyes widened, he turned back to Nai Haitang and Li Xinliang and said, quick, go to the city god's temple and call the city god. It's useless, don't waste your efforts. Although the city god has established himself, his foundation is still shallow after all. He can't even get the 6 yins under him. How long can he protect him just by relying on the incense and merit in his hands? Lu Ji seemed to dust off his fingernails, looking like he was just watching the fun and not taking it too seriously. In fact, if Su Tong hadn't killed the river demon first and set up the city god, Lu Ji wouldn't have been like this. Since there is no need for it, just use the waste. When Yuyang turns into a ghost town, he will use Momo to do it. Tuo Sutra, forcibly transmute thousands of ghosts and offer sacrifices to the Lord of Moda. As for the prophecy, well, it's not like I can't defeat him. Oops. Even Luo Hu's face changed drastically at this time. He was no longer as heroic as before. Unexpectedly, they turned out to be accomplices. Not necessarily. Suddenly a shout interrupted Lu Ji. If the city god can't do it, he can still report it to the underworld. There are 5 underworld emperors above, and there are 10 palaces of Yama below. I'm afraid that there are thousands of evil ghosts like you, and they may not be able to touch Yuyang City. Huh. At this time, Lu Ji heard the words and turned around suspiciously. He followed the direction of the sound and saw a figure slowly standing up in the corner of the collapsed ruins. Originally, I really didn't want to deal with this matter, but if you want to use the lives of the entire people of Yuyang City as your bargaining chip, then I won't agree. Su Tong dusted himself off. In fact, he came here today just to find out the true and falsehood of the Modo leader. After his purpose was achieved, he had no intention of getting involved. After all, whoever was sitting upstairs was a great master in the realm of enlightenment. The old fat man said that he couldn't kill him. He was afraid that even if he opened the door to let the princess go, he wouldn't be able to do anything to the leader of Modo. Just hide under the ruins and watch the excitement. After all, this is not a task given by the script world. If you don't interfere, you will have nothing to lose. But now this guy actually used the wronged souls in the cage as a lure to wash out Yuyang with blood. This is not only related to his identity and mission, but also involves the life and death of Zhou Niang, Guo Yi, and others. And most importantly, the merits of incense. How could I let this guy destroy the base camp I had finally built with so much effort? It's you, Li Zheng. Lu Ji looked Su Tong up and down and recognized at a glance that this was the guy who ruined his plan, River Inspector Li Zheng. He immediately looked at Su Tong's body for a moment and couldn't help but sneered. I haven't gone to find you yet, but you came to my door yourself. Hey! You have already entered the Tao. Lu Ji frowned slightly and carefully examined Su Tong and found that this boy had already entered Taoism. I couldn't help but feel a little surprised in my heart. In today's world, those who are more than 20 years old and join Taoism are not inherited from the teachings. You are so young and have a bright future. It's a pity, it's a pity. Lu Ji sighed and said in a sharp tone, it's a pity that you are going to die. As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Ji took a step forward and walked straight towards Su Tong. Not good. Seeing Lu Ji's unpredictable figure heading straight for Su Tong, the Xinhua guards standing on the tower couldn't help but change their expression slightly and wanted to stop him, but even Luo Hu, one of the commanders, was unable to stop him. Go to the underworld and become an official. 100 steps away, in front of an accomplished master like Lu Ji, it only took seconds. In just an instant, he was in front of Su Tong. He raised his hand and pierced Su Tong's forehead with his empty finger like a sword. Boom! Suddenly, a gong sound came, shaking the void in front of him. Lu Ji's fingers froze in mid-air for a moment, unable to move. Who is it? His pupils tightened and he saw two paper figures standing behind Su Tong. Two paper figures, one black and one white, slowly walked towards Lu Ji's face. The paper figures were still stiff at first, but within 2 or 3 steps, the paper figures became alive. Lu Ji looked around with wide eyes. He couldn't help but be surprised that he couldn't clearly see the facial features of the two people with his eyesight. The Black Hat Master Ba slowly spoke with a calm and solemn voice, all conditioned dharmas are subject to impermanence. Those who love and unite will eventually be separated. In contrast, the voice of the White Hat Master Chi seemed soft and long. The two men appeared behind Su Tong. At the same time, they raised the morning sticks in their hands and struck Lu Ji in front of him. They said in unison, everyone should behave like this, so there should be no worries. As he spoke, the black and white morning sticks fell on his head. Lu Ji's expression changed drastically. He realized that this black and white stick had the strange power to kill people. He immediately ignored Su Tong and flew back. Even though he retreated in time, he still couldn't escape the power of the morning sticks. The two morning sticks hit him squarely in the chest, knocking him away. Seeing Lu Ji being knocked away by the funeral stick, Su Tong raised his head silently. The feeling of spending money is so good. Sorry, I went to the hospital for a checkup today. I have chronic conjunctivitis and my eyes are almost swollen. I haven't updated it in the past few days. Don't blame me, just wait for me to recover. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 640. Bang bang, the two sticks hit Lu Ji, but they didn't feel any pain at all. But when Lu Ji got up from the ground, a white hair fell from his forehead. When he looked up again, his whole body seemed to have aged by more than 10 years, and most of his hair was already white. This. When Lu Ji noticed the changes in himself, he couldn't help but be shocked. Ha 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 ha, 20 years of Yangshao, Lu Ji, there is a god 3 feet above his head, this is retribution. Cough cough cough. Gu Piwen laughed until he coughed up blood. Master. Nai Haitang quickly took out the elixir and gave it to Gu Piwen to eat. After taking the elixir, Gu Piwen's pale face turned a little red. It's just that anyone with a discerning eye can see that Gu Peiyuan's vitality has been severely damaged at this moment, and even his foundation has been damaged. Lu Ji ignored Gu Peiyuan's sarcasm and stared directly at Su Tong, as if he wanted to remember the appearance of this face. You have ruined my important affairs over and over again, so I will remember this grudge. After saying that, Lu Ji glanced at the black and white ghost behind him with fearful eyes. I wanted to say something, but after looking at the black and white morning sticks in their hands, I curled my lips and finally held my breath in my throat. I stomped my feet angrily, jumped onto the city wall, and disappeared in one swift step. In the night. Maybe the more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Only after everyone had gone away did a faint and resentful roar come out. Gu Piwen, Don't be too happy too early. I have great luck with me. The more I get frustrated, the more courageous I am. Can you still do it? As long as you live, prepare a coffin for yourself as soon as possible. Let him go. Su Tong looked at Lu Ji leaving and looked sideways at Master Ba who was standing aside. The eighth master is frugal in his words and cherishes his words like gold. However, Master Chi put his hand on Su Tong's shoulder, and said in a charming voice, "You get what you pay for, our favor is a favor, and business is a business." The corner of Su Tong's mouth twitched. "Then we can't end it with these two sticks, those evil ghosts." "Ba, yeah, it's your job." As he spoke, he threw away the morning stick in his hand, only to see the morning stick fly into the sky. The white paper wrapped around the funeral stick split into millions in an instant, like a rain of sticks, falling down. Those evil spirits were not even afraid of thunder, but they were instantly beaten to ashes under the morning stick. In an instant, all the tens of thousands of evil ghosts were swept away. The occasional scattered evil ghosts that survived were trembling with fear and were taken back by the sound of a bell from the city god's temple. Apparently, Ba left some tales on purpose to let the city god do his duty. "Little brother, the matter is over and we have gone back. Next time you do this kind of business, remember to come to us again," Master Chi said with a smile. "Bring enough money." Master Ba took back the funeral stick and added 3 words. After the two of them finished speaking, they stepped back and their figures flickered. When everyone looked over again, they found that there were actually 2 paper figures standing next to Su Tong. "Tch, you really recognize money but not people." Su Tong curled his lips and couldn't help but murmur in his heart. It's a pity that his official career is smooth at the moment, but he is unlucky to have no fortune. Early the next morning, when people got up, they found that for some reason, there was a lot of grey powder on the ground. Before anyone could understand what was going on, the government posted a notice asking the residents of Yuyang to collect the black powder, and then prepare a craftsman to use the powder to erect a confession stone in front of the city god's temple. It is said that if you do something you feel guilty about, repenting in front of the stone can offset your sins. Regardless of whether it was true or false, the common people were very happy about this, because the government purchased these grey powders based on grain prices, which made many people who had no grain at home smile with joy. At this moment, in the lobby of the governor's mansion, 8 chairs were already full. As the governor of Yuzhou, Zhang Zhen could only sit at the bottom. Of course, compared to the governor, the other subordinate officials were even worse, and could only be reduced to serving tea and water and standing aside to listen. "Thank you so much, Your Majesty, for your help this time, otherwise we would have almost caused a catastrophe." Gu Peiyuan picked up the tea and said to Su Tong. Compared to Zhang Zhen, Su Tong's seat was right next to Gu Peiyuan. "It's your job." Facing the chubby man in front of him, Su Tong imitated the 8th master's demeanor of cherishing words like gold, sitting upright and looking businesslike. "I was very wary of this Doi Yuan, not only because of the identity of the other party, Hanchen Jianzheng, but also because I felt that the way this old guy looked at me was always weird." "That's right. If all the officials of Zhou dynasty can do this, then the world will be peaceful and worry-free for all time." Luo, who was sitting on the other side, holding the teacup in his left hand and saying with a smile. Of course, from the corner of his eye, he glanced at Zhang Zhen, who was sitting at the end. Suddenly, cold sweat broke out on Zhang Zhen's forehead, and his back was mostly cold. Fortunately, after serving as an official for many years, Zhang Zhen was still quite flexible. He quickly stood up and said, "In this matter, the low-level criminal committed a crime of negligence. I have already drafted a memorial and asked you to forward it to the saint and ask the saint to convict you." Luo Hu nodded and motioned to Wu Fan to take the memorial. However, Luo Hu did not read the memorial and only said, "The saints are free to decide on this matter. Master Zhang should do his duty first." "Promise." Zhang Zhen wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and sat back in the chair obediently. What was his duty? He just helped Li Zheng repair the river. After he got the merit, he could get out and go ashore. Although Lu Ji fell behind the Maxim this time, the fate of the Modha sect has not ended. I need to go back as soon as possible to inform the saint. Master Gu, what are your plans? Luo Hu looked at Gu Peiyuan. With his strength, how could he not see that although Gu Peiyuan's face was rosy at the moment, he was already at the end of his strength. He is able to sit in front of him now only because of the power of medicinal stones. I am afraid only Gu Peiyuan himself knows how long he can last. So when I ask this question, I also want to see what Gu Peiyuan's next plan is. If they return to the capital of gods, they will go back together. If he didn't plan to go back, he might as well have an explanation with the saint. The Yang has been decided, and the poor Taoist always has to report back to the saint, but, ahem, the injury is not yet settled, and it needs some time to wait. Seeing that Gu Peiyuan was in really bad condition, Luo Hu took out a bottle of elixir from his sleeve. This is the perfect golden pill. It may be of some help to Sir Gu. Sir, there is no need to worry about returning to the capital. I will report it truthfully in front of the saint. Thank you so much. Gu Peiyuan nodded and motioned to Nai Haitang behind him to collect the elixir. Everyone had been busy all night, and everyone was more or less injured, so Luo Hu didn't say anything nonsense. After saying what needed to be said, he left with a group of divine guards. My lords, please rest early. I still need to inspect the river and excuse myself. After saying that, Su Tong stood up and left. Oh, this guy. When Nai Haitang, who was standing behind Gu Peiyuan, saw this, he couldn't help but curl his lips. I praised him a few times, but he was still out of breath. How rude. Hey, heroes have been born since ancient times. If I could become a Taoist at the age of 20, I would be crazier than him. Gu Peiyuan, on the other hand, didn't take it seriously. After all, who is a young man who is not frivolous? Don't be like your senior brother. You are so young and have a stinky face every day. It annoys me. Master, senior brother, isn't he worried about you? Nai Haitang immediately retorted. Gu Peiyuan didn't say anything when he heard this. He just thought of something and slapped his forehead. It's broken. My destined person is still in the box. Don't hold him back. Come on. Gu Peiyuan ignored Zhang Zhen and others who were sitting aside, stood up and hurried out. At this moment, only the governor Zhang Zhen and others were left in the huge hall. Phew. Finally gone. Zhang Zhen finally breathed a sigh of relief when he saw all these people leaving. He waved his hand to summon Sima and told him to immediately allocate money, food, equipment and manpower to speed up the construction of the river channel. After sending all these subordinates away, Zhang Zhen hesitated for a moment and called his confidants, "Go take out that thing and deliver it to Mr. Li." That thing? Master, you mean? The confidant was startled and then understood, isn't that thing originally meant to be a filial tribute to Mr. Wu? Hearing the words of his confidant, Zhang Zhen sneered, "Who is Mr. Wu? What kind of treasure have I never seen before? Rather than adding icing on the cake, it is better to provide help in the snow. Didn't I just say that this prince has already entered Taoism? It just so happens that this thing is very useful to people who have entered Taoism. The benefit is much more substantial than giving it to Mr. Wu. Master, are you going to bet on this prince? Hey, whether you can pass this level or not is still one thing. Betting is out of the question. I just hope that when this prince returns to the capital of gods, he can say a kind word for me in front of the saint." After 2 days, the entire Yuyang city seemed to have become deserted. This desertedness does not mean that the streets are deserted. But the atmosphere in Yuyang city is gone. Su Tong took Guoyi and others walking on the street. When the people saw Su Tong, they all greeted him with smiles. Without the river demon, the river god, and the Moda cult, the people in Yuyang City could finally see the moonlight with clear clouds. Su Tong enjoys this quiet and peaceful world. Just as Li Zhang, an official fan, expected, he can become an official and make a difference, instead of living in a corner as a heir apparent who eats and drinks. Master Li. As soon as they reached the intersection, they saw Lu Cai and others standing outside the door of the tea house. When he saw Su Tonghao, his eyes lit up and he immediately came forward. Master Li, my master invites you to go upstairs for tea. Lu Cai stepped forward quickly and said to Su Tong. Tu Fei Yuan? Oh no, Sir Gu, invite me to tea. Su Tong glanced upstairs, and sure enough, he saw a big round head sticking out from the window, waving towards Su Tong. The enthusiastic expression reminded Su Tong of the girls from Yingchun Tower standing upstairs waving to him for some reason, so he almost shouted, Master Li, come and play. Faced with Tu Fei Yuan's enthusiastic call, Su Tong originally wanted to refuse. He always felt that this old guy was too enthusiastic about him, so it was better to stay away from him. But at this time, Su Tong suddenly noticed an unfamiliar face sitting in front of Gu Piyuan, who was looking at him sideways. He was a young man, about the same age as Li Zhang, with handsome features, but his slender peach blossom eyes gave people a mean look. Sensing the other party's eyes sizing him up, Su Tong took a closer look with his life ikemen without any courtesy. The result was that he didn't know what he was looking at. He was startled when he saw it. Hey, why is this guy here? Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 641. After the player enters the script world, he completely replaces the identity of the person being played, and will also replace part of their luck. But some cases are exceptional. For example, some specific luck, such as Su Tong's previous wealth privileges. This kind of special luck will accompany you no matter what role you play, and you will even be given a special identity because of this luck. And the top of the head of the young man in front of him is green, well, the green of green mountains and green waters. However, in a sea of green forests and bamboos, what is vaguely visible is Mount Qingcheng. Qingcheng got a Kiran's son by chance and enjoyed his fortune alone for 800 years. Su Tong has only seen this kind of luck in one person in the world, and that is Zhang Haisheng. And only he can have such unique luck. Su Tong stood there in shock for a while before finally confirming that he had read it correctly. Why did this guy come here too? Su Tong could not help but think in his heart that this could not be a coincidence. He followed Gao Zhou and came to the script world. Even if Zhang Haisheng wanted to enter the script world, he would not be in the same script as him by such a coincidence. In the world. Thinking of this, there is only one explanation. This guy came here by himself. As for why he followed me to the script world, I didn't know, but since I met him, I might as well ask him to find out. Thinking of this, Su Tong strode into the tea house without waiting for Lu Cai to speak. When he came to the door of the elegant room, he heard Tu Fei Yuan's voice, ha 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 ha, I will definitely pass by this place even if I am the prince. I have been waiting here for the prince for a long time. Su Tong walked in and saw two tables in the private room. Zhao Peng and other senior fellow apprentices were sitting on one table. On the other table, there were three people sitting. Apart from Tu Fei Yuan and Nai Haitang, there was only Zhang Haisheng. Su Tong strode to the table, and before Tu Fei Yuan could speak, he sat directly next to Zhang Haisheng. What are you doing here? As soon as he opened his mouth, Tu Fei Yuan, who was originally smiling, was immediately stunned. Not only Tu Fei Yuan was stunned, but Zhao Peng and others were also startled. They couldn't help but look at Su Tong and Zhang Haisheng, their eyes becoming weird for a moment. Zhang Haisheng was just suspicious at first, but when he heard this question, he was immediately convinced that Mr. Li Zheng in front of him was Su Tong. For a moment, Zhang Haisheng felt disgusted in his heart, thinking that he really was this guy. When I think about how this guy has accomplished so many tricks in such a short period of time, he must have completed his identity mission. And I was unlucky enough to be put under house arrest by this pervert, which made me feel extremely depressed just thinking about it. So he said stubbornly, "I want to come, but you can take care of it." "I don't care, then you can continue to stay here, I'm leaving." Su Tong stood up and walked out. He was not blind. As soon as he entered the door, he noticed the anklet on Zhang Haishen's foot. This guy had obviously been caught, and he was still arguing with him, etc. Zhang Haisheng was really panicked when he saw that Su Tong was leaving. He was an upright virgin. This old pervert insisted on saying that he was his destined person, but he couldn't beat him. If Su Tong left now, find someone to cry to. He immediately grabbed his arm, lowered his head so that no one could see the final stubbornness on his face, and said in a grievance-like voice like a mosquito, "Help me." "Hey." Su Tong bared his teeth and smiled, "How good." With that said, he threw an invitation to join the team to Zhang Haisheng. Zhang Haisheng was startled and looked at the invitation to join the team in confusion, but then he thought about it. Su Tong might be the only one who could help him out at this time. Joining the team would also be able to monitor his every move. Haisheng didn't think much about this invitation. He nodded and agreed to the invitation to join the team. Ahem. Seeing his destined person holding someone else's hand, Gu Peiwen could only stare blankly for a moment. He didn't know whether he was anxious or just couldn't stand it anymore, so he coughed heavily. Seeing this, Su Tong sat back on the chair, but did not mention Zhang Haishen's problem at all. Instead, he squinted his eyes and looked up and down at the earthy circle in front of him. "Sir, you are injured so badly, and you still want to find me, could there be something going on?" Seeing that Su Tong did not ask about his destined person, Gu Peiwen's expression softened slightly, and he gradually smiled and said, "Hunshan Supervisor supervises the three religions and governs the world's heterogeneous schools. He is involved in the magic of Dunjia, prophecy, and prayer. It's just that the prince of that day was able to summon the gods of the underworld to come into the world with Godhead. This is the first time I have heard of this technique. So I would like to ask the prince what this technique is. Nowadays, although there are some places in Dazhu that have the tradition of burning yellow mounts, Mingqiao, they are completely local characteristics and cannot be more niche. As for the art of paper tying, it has not yet been developed. In the funeral system of the Great Zhou dynasty, most of the funerals were accompanied by burials. Although Taizong announced the abolition of human sacrifice, it was still used secretly among the princes and nobles. The worst thing is that there are a large number of Tang Sankei and pottery figurines for burial. Paper figures were not popular in this era. Therefore, it is natural that Gu Peiyuan has never seen Su Tong's 7 techniques. Paper magic. Su Tong had nothing to hide about this. He learned from Li Zheng's memory that although the Great Zhou dynasty strictly prohibited cults, it did not prohibit the practice of heterodox schools among the people. It's even a little encouraging. The reason for this is that today's saints ascend the throne as daughters and proclaim themselves emperors. They are risking the world's disobedience and need to establish some legitimacy for themselves. For example, wooing Buddhism. Therefore, Buddhism has flourished in the past 2 years, which is due to luck. But Buddhism alone is not enough. The Li family has been in power for so many years and established Taoism as the state religion long ago. Even today's saints cannot change this fact. Therefore, we simply open up the folk paganism, hoping that these pagan techniques can share some Taoist luck. I saw Su Tong's palm open, and a piece of yellow paper was gently held by Su Tong in the palm of his hand, and it was folded into a lifelike lotus flower. So beautiful. Nai Haitang's bright eyes were staring at Lotus and he couldn't help praising her. The ghost enters the paper, it's kind of interesting. Gu Piwen stared at the lotus on Su Tong's hand. With his knowledge, how could he not see the future of paper art? So he asked Su Tong, who can come up with such fantastic ideas? In general, could you please tell me where your master came from? The reason why Gu Piwen came to see Su Tong after 2 days was because he investigated the prince thoroughly during these 2 days, and as a result, people from Sichuan came to report. It is said that Li Zheng was frail and sickly since he was a child and had neither learned martial arts nor practiced any other skills. So this is strange. Since there is no such thing, how did these people in their early 20s join Taoism? Not to mention that he completed it during the 2 months he was on the road. If this is the case, then after practicing hard for most of his life, can he be regarded as a dog? There is also the Yuyang City case, which was originally a big whirlpool. Someone clearly knew that there was a big trouble in Yuyang City, and that the trouble was caused by Zhang Zhen. Zhang Zhen was a disciple of the Wu family, and half of the annual tax money was given to the Wu family. Colluding with the river demon and conniving with the river goddess were all done by Zhang Zhen. The previous 3 river inspectors were also killed by Zhang Zhen. Once Zhang Zhen's crimes are exposed, Prime Minister Wu will inevitably be impeached. Once this matter is thoroughly investigated, it will be a major case that will connect the carrots to the root and point directly at the current saint. It is precisely for this reason that a prince who is not familiar with the world is thrown in. Even if Prince Gong no longer has a sense of existence, he will always be a relative of the emperor and the blood of the Li family. The Prime Minister Wu also realized it later, but the appointment had already been issued and it was too late to pursue it. This is what happened when the Shinwu guards came in a hurry. Otherwise, I really thought that the Shinwu guards were so idle and full. What were they doing here? It's not too much to say that he came to protect Su Tong secretly. But who would have thought that this prince, like a prophet who could predict the future, would first establish a city god when he came to Yuyang, and then kill the river demon without saying a word? This made the Shinwu guards a little confused. What about the weak and sick people they promised? What do you say you don't know about the world? Where is the ghost you promised to die? That's good, what's going to happen without them? Zhang Zhen was frightened out of his wits by such a thunderous maneuver, and surrendered directly. All the blame was placed on Song Qin and friends, and he was completely picked off. Of course, the reason why Su Tong was able to go so smoothly was because Mei had written the reminder on the mask, otherwise he would have entered Yuyang City with a black eye, with river monsters in front of him, Moto cult behind him, and fights in the middle. With Zhang Zhen, the governor who is scheming behind the scenes, it is not that easy to complete the task. Luo Hu and the others won't care about these details. As long as they ensure that all the blame will be borne by someone and the prime minister will not be blamed, they will not care about other things. But Gu Piwen wanted to investigate these issues clearly. After all, this is the responsibility of the Hunshan prison. If they resurrect the corpse for speculation, they will have to give an explanation to the Li family. Faced with Gu Piwen's doubts, Su Tong was not so cooperative this time. Instead, he took the hand of Zhang Haisheng beside him. You might as well tell me first what you want to do with my brother. Your brother? Gu Piwen narrowed his eyelids and stared at Su Tong. Su Tong lifted his chin and blinked at Gu Piwen. I hate it, don't make me speak so clearly. Hiss. Zhang Haisheng was startled, and then Su Tong cast an ambiguous look. Goosebumps suddenly stood up all over his body, and he instinctively wanted to withdraw his hand. As a result, Su Tong held his hand tighter and looked at Gu Piwen. Even if you are the supervisor of Hunshan prison, you have no right to arrest innocent people. Gu Piwen looked at the hands of the two people holding each other and couldn't help but feel a little annoyed, but he still suppressed his anger and explained to Zhang Haisheng aside, I don't have any ill intentions, it's just that you and I are destined, and the opportunity for the poor man to kill the Tao lies in the small road on friends. The devil has a destiny with you. Damn it! Zhang Haisheng rolled his eyes, looking like he wished he could stay away from this old pervert. Look, if my brother doesn't want to leave with you, then he will leave with me. Su Tong took Zhang Haishen's hand and looked determined to take him away. The ants are still trying to survive. Although Pandeo only has half a year left to live, he still wants to give it a try. Gu Piwen put down the teacup in his hand, and his expression gradually became unkind. After all, from Taizong to now, no one in the world has killed anyone. The opportunity is right in front of him, how could Gu Piwen let it go so easily? Nai Haitang sat aside and stared at the tense expressions of the three of them with wide eyes. He carefully picked up a cup of tea and put it to his mouth, sipping the cup and thinking, 3 men performing a show is really exciting. However, at this tense moment, Su Tong suddenly lowered his voice, this is my best brother. If you want to take him away, you have to pay more. Gu Piwen? Nai Haitang? Zhang Haisheng? My eyes have been feeling uncomfortable recently, so I have to stop and rest when writing. Sometimes I squint one eye while typing, so the typos may not be corrected accurately. Occasionally there are omissions. If you point them out, I will correct them as soon as possible. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 642. Outside the tea house, the carriage slowly stopped. I just heard a burst of yelling and cursing coming from the tea house. You bastard, I will kill you sooner or later. Beast. I want to quit the team. Everyone heard the yelling and followed the sound without knowing why, but the sound soon stopped abruptly. After a while, Zhao Pen was seen carrying a young man downstairs with an expressionless expression. The young man was quite handsome, but he had a swollen panda eye on his face. He threw him directly onto the carriage and stood guard by the carriage with a dark face. After about a while, Tu Fiwen walked downstairs with Nai Haitang's support and got into the carriage with Nai Haitang. As soon as he got on the carriage, Nai Haitang couldn't help but feel sorry for Zhang Haisheng beside him. You are talking about a brother, but you are a disciple. Despicable and shameless. A sanctimonious hypocrite. Tu Fiwen patted his chubby belly. Faced with his disciple's complaints, he didn't know how to respond. He always felt that Haitang's words were scolding him, but he didn't think he was scolded. Master, you just gave him the Taizhang Alchemy Sutra like this. Isn't it too cheap for him? As for the Biluo Dan he mentioned, my disciple has never heard of it. He must be lying to you, master. Haitang's voice changed and she started chattering towards Tu Fiwen again. Tu Fiwen felt dizzy and could only wave his hand. A book of alchemy is nothing. Besides, he saved Yu Yang this time. This can be regarded as a reward from Hunshan prison. After saying this, Tu Fiwen looked thoughtful. According to the Prince Li Zheng, he accidentally ate something called Biluo pill, and his soul ascended to Biluo, where he was taught the Dharma by Fairy Biluo. He went to poverty and fell to hell. Let's just say he is real. After Tu Fiwen finished speaking, he glanced at the unconscious Zhang Haisheng beside him. Destined person, how should I use this? Accompanied by Tu Feiyuan's muttering, the carriage had already left Yuyang City. Su Tong stood on the top of the city tower and didn't feel relieved until he saw the carriage completely gone. I'm sorry, brother, it's better to be a Taoist friend than to be a poor Taoist. Anyway, the old guy won't harm you. Su Tong said, calling out the prop book. Looking at the prop card, he couldn't help but feel happy. Taishang Danjeng. The carrier's success rate of elixir refining is increased by 30%, and the efficacy of the elixir refined is increased by 10%. Active Skill 1, Shannon. Spend 20 script points to identify the properties of medicines in the world. Cooling time, none. Active skill 2, Supreme Alchemy. After activation, you will gain the Supreme Alchemy technique, which will increase the alchemy efficiency by 300%, increase the probability of forming an elixir by 50%, and have a certain probability of triggering elixir patterns. Each minute consumes 1 script point. Active skill 3, Taizhang Alchemy Sutra. After activation, the elixir can be specially sealed. The longer the elixir is sealed, the stronger the effect of the elixir. Note, be careful, this medicine contains 3 parts of poison, while Angelica Sinensis is the most powerful tonic. Looking at this prop card, Su Tong's little calculation has started to move in his heart. He has a fairy furnace, an alchemy scripture, and a golden finger. He doesn't know if he can refine any treasures by working together. The only thing left now is to find suitable medicinal materials for alchemy. It's a pity that Zhang Haisheng can only sell it once. If he could sell it a few more times, with Han Chenjian's family background, he would have become rich long ago. But thinking of this, Su Tong couldn't help but feel more wary of Hunchen prison. Zhang Haishen's strength was not bad, but he punched him and knocked him unconscious. Ordinarily, his strength should not be like this. The problem was most likely due to the shackles on his legs. The shackles that can limit a person's strength. I have to be more careful in the future. Of course, I am not completely sorry for him. After all, Su Tong said it was impossible not to guard against Tu Fei Yuan, so this punch was not in vain. Fasai, are you sure Tu Fei Yuan won't discover your clone? Just in case, Su Tong confirmed with Fasai again. Fa Cai lay down at the entrance of the hall, shook his head, and said that as long as the clone was in a still state, no one would be able to detect anything unusual. Ah, that's good. After confirming that there was no problem, he felt relieved. After Zhang Haisheng woke up and came into contact with the fortune clone, he could use the characteristics of the fortune clone to unshackle the shackles. Will he be able to escape from Tu Fei Yuan's clutches? That's his own business. After jumping off the tower, Su Tong went to inspect the river again. As the sun set, he walked leisurely towards the post house. When he reached the post house, Su Tong saw 2 carriages parked in front of the post house. At first glance, there is the mark of Yuzhu Governor on it. Is Zhang really here? Seeing this, Su Tong frowned. He actually didn't have a good impression of the governor of Yuzhu at all. If he hadn't been prompted by his aime, he would have known earlier that if he wanted to build a river channel, he had to kill the river demon first. I rush into Yuyang City rashly, I'm afraid it won't be as easy as it is now to complete the identity mission. Not knowing what this guy was doing here, Su Tong patiently walked into the post house. As soon as he entered the door, Guoyi greeted him. Your Majesty, the assistant officer from the governor's office is here. Sergeant. What is he doing here? Su Tong frowned and asked. According to the system of the Great Zhou dynasty, only officials of the 4th rank or above are qualified to be assigned assistant officers. In fact, they can also be understood as the position of secretary. Oh, not the kind of secretary who warms the bed, but an official with independent administrative privileges, similar to the Secretary General in reality. As for this assistant officer, in reality, his status would be equivalent to the Secretary General of the province and the actual level of the main office. In terms of official position, he is 1 level higher than himself, who is from the 5th rank. I said I wanted to give you something. Do you want to type it out? Guoyi didn't have the slightest favorable impression of the governor, who was in the corpse meal position. My eldest son is supported by all the people this time, and he will definitely be praised by the court after he returns. Coupled with his identity, I am afraid that he has a bright future, so why should he have anything to do with such a person? It only ruined the name of his eldest son. No, Let's see what it is first. Su Tong shook his head at this. After all, we have to stay here for a while, there is no need to provoke this local snake. In the governor's mansion 2 days ago, Su Tong could tell from the words of Xinwu guard Luohu that he was protecting Zhang Zhen. If you think about it carefully, Song's relatives and friends committed suicide before, and Zhang Zhen stepped on the spot in time to reveal these unsolved mysteries, which already have answers. So behind Zhang Zhen is the Wu family, and behind the Wu family is the current saint. With my identity, if I go to poke the Wu family in the butt, if I am not careful, I will fall into complete passivity. Only fools will take such unnecessary and profitable risks. He followed Guoyi to the yard behind and saw a dozen large boxes already placed in the yard. You don't need to open it to know what's in the box, but the assistant officer is standing in the yard waiting with a large wooden box alone. After seeing Su Tong return, the assistant officer immediately stepped forward, crossed his hands with thumbs up, and made a cross-hand salute. I am the assistant officer of the prefectural governor's office. I have paid homage to the crown prince. By order of my family, I have come to deliver something to the crown prince. After the assistant officer said that, he asked someone to open the red cloth behind him. Su Tong took a closer look and saw that it turned out to be a ginseng. So big. Even though Su Tong was well informed, he was shocked when he saw this ginseng. He couldn't help but secretly rejoiced. If you are really sleepy, someone will give you a pillow. Now the materials for making alchemy are delivered to your door. Even Guoyi and others on the side were shocked. Good guy, the last time the torta soup was stewed in front of the city god's temple, those wealthy businessmen raised funds and sold a century-old ginseng. It was already big enough. Compared with the ginseng in front of me, it is so different that it makes people wonder whether this thing and ginseng are of the same species. In the huge box, a ginseng as thick as an adult's arm was tightly wrapped with 2 red ribbons. The ginseng roots are like waterfalls, and the whole body is golden with a hint of purple light. Even the ginseng leaves remain fresh and tender. At first glance, it looked like it had just been dug up. Such a large ginseng is simply a rare treasure in the world. Headmaster, this thing has become a spirit. When De Ya saw ginseng at the entrance of the hall, she turned into a husky almost instantly, and her voice suddenly rose 8 levels. She looks like a country girl, with a face that has never seen the world. Speaking of which, there are a lot of ginseng in Chenbei mountain in the northeast. There is even a 1,000-year-old ginseng hidden in the 5 Immortals Hall, but even the 1,000-year-old ginseng is not that big. If you encounter someone who doesn't know the goods, you will think that it is a big radish grown by someone. Seeing Su Tong's surprised look, the official couldn't help but feel proud. In fact, it wasn't the first time he saw this thing, but every time he saw it, he always sighed. It was a treasure gathered from heaven and earth. Originally, the governor was planning to stay on his own, but later he changed his mind and planned to give it to the prime minister after he almost sent several members away on the spot after learning about the top-notch soup in the Chenghuang temple. Now the wind direction has changed, and these rare treasures have been delivered to Master Li. A mere 5th-grade official might not even be qualified to take a look at him in ordinary times. Your Majesty, my governor said that this ginseng is a family heirloom. It has been passed down from generation to generation since my grandfather's time. In order to ensure that the medicinal properties of this treasure are not affected, this ginseng has always been hidden in the Zhang family's ancestral home. It has been planted in the temple for 200 years now, and my lord said that this ginseng has the effect of bringing the dead back to life. Zhoguan introduced the origin of this ginseng eloquently, and finally boasted about the miraculous effects of this ginseng. This caused the followers to burst into exclamations of exclamation. After all, such a grown-up ginseng is about to become a spirit, so it is not an exaggeration to say that it has the effect of bringing the dead back to life. However, Su Tong immediately sneered when he heard this. Oh, come back to life. I don't believe it. How about I kill you and try it on you? Ah! The sergeant was startled, and when he raised his head, he felt a chill in his throat, and saw that the crown prince's knife was already on his neck. The cold touch on the blade made the officer's heart jump to his throat. That cold murderous aura could never be faked. The officer's Adam's apple squirmed for a moment, he swallowed a mouthful of foam, and said with a smile, "You can't do that, my eldest son. I'm addicted to it, and I'm talking nonsense." Snort. Su Tong sneered and put away the knife in his hand. "I think so. If it were so easy to bring back the dead, could this thing send away 3 generations of governors in your family?" The assistant officer didn't know what to say for a moment and could only lower his head. When Su Tong saw that the beating was almost done, the cold expression on his face suddenly changed, and he showed a smile that looked like sunshine. He patted the assistant officer on the shoulder and heard his voice change. "Resurrection from the dead is an exaggeration, but it is still possible to treat illnesses and injuries and give people a chance to breathe." The assistant officer was startled and immediately understood the meaning. He cupped his hands and said, "What the prince said is true, and my lord thinks so too." "Okay, thank your master for me, and tell him that I will visit you again when the river project is completed." "Thank you for your help, Mr. Governor." As he spoke, Su Tong picked up the tea brought by Sun Yang and took a sip. As the saying goes, serving tea to see guests off, the assistant officer naturally understood the meaning and quickly stood up to say goodbye. After the assistant officer left, everyone immediately gathered around the ginseng root to watch. But no one thought about eating this stuff. After all, the last time the bastard soup had made many followers realize that this was something that ordinary people really couldn't enjoy. 100-year-old ginseng made their waists hurt for several days, let alone this thing. But having said that, if I could just take a bite, it would be worth it to be straight for the rest of my life. Guo Yi. Su Tong called Guo Yi and told him to add all the silver coins he sent to the river project fund, as a red envelope to the river workers. After all, my financial luck is so bad that there is no benefit in keeping this money with me, so I might as well spend it early. Of course, Su Tong did not forget these followers. Even if among these people, except Guo Yi, he treats himself sincerely, the others are just hanging around him. But Su Tong still divided some of it and asked Guo Yi to distribute it to these followers. After all, what a person lives for is just these few taels of silver. As for the ginseng, he naturally put it away because he wanted to make an elixir. This thing came and it just happened to be the material for the elixir. "Thank you, Your Majesty." As soon as they heard the money was divided, these followers immediately became happy. Before, they were complaining about the prince's lavish payment of money to the river workers, but he never gave them a tael of silver. Now as the heavy silver fell on their hands, the unhappiness in my heart immediately disappeared. "Sun Yang, this is yours." Guo Yi walked to the kitchen, took out a heavy piece of silver and handed it to Sun Yang beside him. "I don't want it. I can't spend all the money the prince gave me, so what are you going to do with it?" "I don't want it." Sun Yang was just busy cooking and refused after taking one look at the money. "Hey, this is a reward from the crown prince. There is no reason to refuse it. Take it." Guo Yi was also a stubborn donkey. When Sun Yang refused, he put the money into Sun Yang's hand without hesitation. "What are you trying to do?" "I don't want it, you take it." Sun Yang immediately pushed it up, and a piece of silver fell to the ground with a pop as the two of them pushed it back and forth. Sun Yang and Guo Yi were startled, and then looked at their hands still tightly clasped. Seeing this, Sun Yang's face turned red and she pushed the stunned Guo Yi away as if she was a little annoyed. She raised her hand to pick up the water gourd in the water tank and splashed cold water on Guo Yi's face. "Go out. You." Guo Yi's eyes widened, he looked at the silver on the ground, then looked at Sun Yang who was blushing, curled his lips, picked up the silver on the ground and slapped it on the table. Bang. It's the prince who gave it to me anyway. Do you like it or not? After saying that, Guoyi walked out without looking back. When he walked out of the door, he saw a group of followers looking at him with strange eyes. They immediately stared at him. What are you looking at? Follow me to the river to oversee the work. Seeing that Boss Guo was angry, everyone immediately calmed down and followed behind. In the kitchen, Sun Yang's heart was still pounding. She glanced at the silver on the table, and suddenly she couldn't laugh or cry again. She saw a good ingot of silver, which was turned into a pancake. Zhou Niang held the silver cake in her hand and remembered Guoyi's blushing face just now but didn't dare to show off. She couldn't help but burst out laughing, this stubborn donkey. The river project was completed faster than Su Tong thought. Especially after Su Tong distributed all the money sent by Zhang Zhen to the river workers, everyone started working harder than the other. It only took half a month. The river channel is almost completed. In the past half month, Su Tong has gradually integrated himself into the role of Li Zheng. During the day, he plays the role of an official and benefits good officials in one place. In the evening, Yuan Shen escaped into the hall and began to focus on refining elixirs. In addition to the ginseng root, he also had some old medicines purchased from the local pharmacy. Fortunately, in this era, traditional Chinese medicine is far more developed than in reality. As long as they are not rare treasures from the mountains and wild places, other ordinary medicinal materials can be purchased in most drug stores. In addition, Su Tong's prestige in Yuyang City has far surpassed other local officials. When the drug store owners saw him, they wanted to take out all their housekeeping treasures and send them back to him. At that time, he actually collected a lot of high-quality medicinal materials. Based on the principle that things should not be wasted, Su Tong did not plan to use ginseng essence to make elixirs for the time being. Instead, he asked Fa Cai to contribute the Wuling Z that had been dried for a long time to try. Wuling Z activates blood circulation and removes blood stasis, combined with the medicinal materials bought from the pharmacy, and threw it into the fairy furnace. After trying to refine it with Tai's Hang Danjing, several round pills were actually refined in the furnace. Pill out. Take it out and take a look at 5 spiritual pills for injury reduction. The user can quickly recover 30% of physical damage, and recover 10% of damage every 5 minutes for the next 2 hours. Duration, 2 hours. Not to be taken continuously. After looking at the effect, it was pretty good. After sealing it with the Tai's Hang Alchemy Sutra, I continued to refine the elixir. During this period, he picked off a ginseng root as the main ingredient, and refined 2 ginseng tonic pills from it, which were used to increase cultivation, and one was given to make a fortune. After all, it was the most depleted, so it was necessary to replenish it more. The other one was divided in half between Dia and Jixiang. But after a long night of patience, not even a single Taoist elixir could be refined. During this period, he also lost 6,000 script points due to the use of golden fingers, but Su Tong was so distressed that he rolled on the floor. I could only cry sadly, use the Shankao, and go to find the master in despair. You wouldn't know it until you go in. As soon as you enter the door, you will see that the old tree with the crooked neck of the eldest princess has suddenly grown into a big tree in the sky. There is also a swing hanging on the tree. Of course, no matter how Su Tong looked at it, he felt that the swing was made of hanging ropes. Sensing Su Tong's aura, the eldest princess fell down from the tree crown in white clothes, sat on the swing, and waved to Su Tong to come up and sit with her. No, I'm afraid of heights. When Su Tong saw this, he immediately shook his head and refused. Immediately, his eyes were fixed on the eldest princess. Why do I feel that your strength has become higher again? Hey, do you think I was bragging with those old Taoist priests in Qingcheng Mountain last time? 2 pairs of dimples appeared on the eldest princess's face. The last time the 2 of them went to Qingcheng Mountain to eat instant noodles, the meal was not for nothing. Just as the eldest princess said, although there are no opportunities to practice in reality, this does not prevent the Taoist priests from concentrating on practicing Taoism. On the contrary, because there is no threshold for the realm of cultivation, and you focus wholeheartedly on improving the inner essence, this further conforms to the concept of nature and returning to nature. So despite the fact that those old Taoist priests are not very powerful, not even great masters, but in terms of their understanding of the Tao, even if they pull the old Taoists over, they may not be their opponents. After the eldest princess was enlightened by these experienced experts, what she didn't understand before suddenly became clear. Naturally, her strength soared at an alarming rate. At this point, Su Tong could only envy him. He was there that day, but what happened was that he listened to those old masters talking so wildly. As for what they were talking about, he didn't even remember a single word. "Don't tell my master, I was there at the time." Thinking of this, Su Tong had to lower his voice and whispered to the eldest princess. If his master knew about this, he might force him to endorse it again. "Humph, it depends on my mood." The eldest princess pursed her lips and stretched out her palm towards Su Tong. "Lend me some merit." "Haha, it sounds like you will pay me back." Su Tong rolled his eyes. This was definitely a case of Rubaiyazai beating a dog and never coming back, but he still gave some of his merits and incense to the eldest princess. After getting the incense merit, the eldest princess twirled her fingers with satisfaction. Suddenly, black water rolled up in front of her eyes, making way for Su Tong. "Obviously I'm going home, but why is it like driving on the expressway? I have to pay to get in." Looking at the way out of the way, Su Tong muttered with dissatisfaction. As a result, as soon as he walked over, he saw the old man sitting on the threshold with no intention of giving way. "Ahem. My ears have been a little irritated these days. I didn't hear anything just now." The old man raised his head, narrowed his eyes and opened his hand towards Su Tong, as if "You don't open the door for me, I won't open the door for you." Su Tong sighed, thinking that with his little fortune, couldn't he even retain the merits of incense? Fortunately, the city god's temple is now deeply rooted in people's hearts. "I have too many things like incense and merit, so I don't feel any distress if I give some to the old Taoist." Just as he was about to walk inside, he suddenly thought that since these two people had already given it, there was no need to give out more. He glanced at the depths of the black water behind him, at the huge mountain ghost and the one from the May family. Zombie ancestors. So he took out 2 more copies and asked the old man to send them to them. "Master, you are generous." The old Taoist took the merit and immediately went to deliver it to these 2 guys. Su Tong opened the door smoothly, and as soon as he entered, he saw his master and master sitting in the pavilion drinking tea. "Because the master is just a ray of soul attached to Chen Wang's body, I still stay here." In the words of the master, by deceiving the secrets in this way, even if someone wants to investigate, they will not be able to find out the origin of the person standing in the statue of the city god, which saves a lot of trouble. Now it seems that the master still has the foresight. Su Tong believed that both the Shinwu guards and the Hunshan prison must have worked hard in this area. "Just because I couldn't find anything, I didn't mention it to myself." "Hey, why are you here today?" When the master saw Su Tong, he couldn't help but wave to him with a smile on his face. When Su Tong raised his nose, he was like a child who had been wronged when he went out. He threw himself into the arms of Master Shuigui with a sad face. "Grandpa Master, I failed in my alchemy. Thank you for everyone's concern. Don't worry. It's just chronic conjunctivitis. I've been to the hospital and had my eyes opened. I'm recovering. I think it will be cured soon." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 643. People say that children who cry get candy. Su Tong was usually very naughty and well behaved with his master, but he really went out of his way to cry to his master. Even for a person like Master Shuigui, this was a bit too much for him. When I asked, it turned out that I couldn't make the elixir. Master Song Lai stared at him. I told you to study more, but you didn't, and now you know you are crying. I think you are just. But before he finished speaking, Shuigui sat aside and glared. He doesn't know it and you can't teach it? As a master, you didn't teach him how to make alchemy. How could he do it? Song Lai blushed for a moment and thought to himself, you didn't teach me anything either. Of course, he didn't dare to say this, otherwise he would inevitably be sacrificed by his master as a hidden weapon. Okay, our 7 sects are not good at alchemy, but if you want to learn it, it's not difficult. The master pinched his beard and already had an idea in his mind. Su Tong raised his head, do you still want to study? On the side, Mr. Song was so angry that his nose was crooked. If you don't learn, why do you still have to be your teacher to make elixirs for you? Is that okay? Go away. Traitor. Shuigui shook his head with a speechless face, but still said, if you don't want to learn, it's not impossible. I can help you find a way to have someone help you make elixirs. Su Tong suddenly beamed, Grandpa Shi, you still love me. But Shuigui's words changed, but you have to wait for this matter. I won't go out for a while, and I have to wait and see the opportunity. Looking at the opportunity. Su Tong's heart moved slightly, as if he could vaguely hear the implication of the master's words. At this time, Mr. Song restrained his anger, sent the teacup to Su Tong's table, and asked about another matter seemingly casually, you also met the leader of the Motuo sect a few days ago. Grasp. Su Tong glanced at the master next to him, saw his smiling expression, and thought to himself, well, you guys are the master and the disciples who have a deep love for each other and work together seamlessly. This double act is almost as good as the duo. He raised his chin for a moment, and after thinking for a moment, he shook his head and said, it's difficult. This is not an excuse, but it is really difficult. Last time I used the life icon to see Lu Ji's luck. As Doi Yuan said, the hidden dragon emerges from the abyss and is unstoppable. Even though I gave this guy a hard blow through Siekif and Ba, 2 shady men from the underworld, it was too difficult to kill him. Moreover, Yuyang City's setback may not be a bad thing for him. Lu Ji's luck is so strong. Every time he drinks, he pecks, he loses, and he gains. If he has a slight setback, he will definitely be compensated accordingly in another matter. And the series of actions he did when he entered Yuyang this time, it is estimated that Lu Ji had the heart to cut himself into pieces. The next time they meet, Lu Ji will definitely be stronger. How he deals with him is another matter. Let alone kill him. Maybe we can only wait for Tu Fi Yuan's prophecy to take effect. Well, this matter is actually not difficult. Master Shuigui said. Master, do you have any idea? Su Tong immediately regained his energy. Although Master Shuigui was only a Grand Master, that was because the Master in his era could only reach Grand Master. Just like when 2 children took a math test, some children worked hard to get close to full marks, while some children easily got full marks. What's even more uncomfortable is that he was able to get 100 points because there were only 100 points. The master belongs to the latter. If the master is placed in the current script world, it is estimated that with the master's talent, becoming a Taoist is not a problem. Bad luck for him. There was a sneer on the corner of the master's mouth. 1 is fate, 2 is luck, and 3 are feng shui. It is difficult to change one's fate against the will of nature, but it is very easy if one has bad luck. There are many ways to bring bad luck to bad people. In addition to praying and losing one's luck, there are also many special techniques to bring good luck to bad guys. For example, lowering the head, dog goo, yellow plague, mission technique, etc., including sitting on the immortal pile. and it just so happened that after the Republic of China, because the practice of cultivation was weak, people shifted their energy to magic, and various magic methods emerged endlessly. This also led to an unprecedented improvement in the development of magic during that period. Even the Master's mountain buckle came into being under this background. In my early years, I knew that a person had a skill that could damage his luck. This skill is called Huang Wen. The Master recalled that in those days, this technique was not sinister, but it was most subtle and difficult for ordinary people to detect. If someone is accidentally targeted, it can take anywhere from a few months to a few days, which can cause a person's luck to decline, and in severe cases, the person's family will be destroyed. Get pen and ink. Shuigui signaled. Mr. Song immediately prepared his pen and ink. I saw the Master writing down the names of 5 people in turn, as well as related things that needed to be prepared. They are black, white, and yellow, 3 vicious dogs. 3 coins for rhinoceros incense, 1 wall nail, and a lantern with 5 sides, yellow paper, cinnabar, and other trivial items. These 3 vicious dogs are going to be caught in the mass graves. Go there at night. Remember, we don't want the ones with mixed hair, the ones without red eyes, and the tongues with a thick layer of moss are best. This, Master, is this okay? Su Tong looked at the list and felt a little unsure. After all, Lu Ji was an enlightened person. As the so-called enlightened heavenly being, could such a low-level method work on him? Humph, don't worry, if you meet him again next time, you will find a way to live next door to his house. Scrape off the tongue coating on the dog's tongue, smear it on the nail, and find an opportunity to nail it on the bed where he rests. Next, set up the incense table, cut off the dog's head and offer it to the altar, put up a lantern at 3 o'clock every day, face the lantern, and burn the yellow paper with Lu Ji's name written on it. It's that simple. The so-called yellow plague is also called dog descending. The 5 names on the lantern correspond to the 5 directions plague lords. The wall nail stained with dog's tongue was nailed to the head of the bed. Whoever slept on it would be unlucky, and as long as he slept for 3 days, it would be useless even if the person moved. Master, how come you know this technique so clearly? Su Tong put away the paper given by his master and asked another question. Shuigui picked up the tea, took a sip, and said in an unreasonable manner, when a person is about to die, his words are also good. Well, I'll go back first. Su Tong observed his words and saw the cold flash in his master's eyes. He already had the answer in his heart and immediately put away his things and got up to leave. After returning to the room and dispersing the confusion between reality and reality, Su Tong had not yet had time to take a sip of tea. Then I heard Sun Yang knocking on the door, and her voice sounded a little urgent. Your Majesty, someone is coming from the palace. In the palace. Su Tong stood up and opened the door, only to see Sun Yang saying nervously, Yes, I told you to go to the front yard quickly. Well, don't worry, it's a good thing. Su Tong did not rush out, but spoke to calm Sun Yang's mood. Not to mention a woman, even the officials in the court would panic when they heard about this kind of thing. It's like an employee in the company suddenly received a call from the Human Resources Department. You look at the phone number and wonder in your heart whether this is going to cause trouble for you. After appeasing Sun Yang, Su Tong straightened his clothes and then walked to the front of the yard to take a look. It looks a bit familiar. I remember this person seems to be the Xinwu guard who was following Luo Hu. Seeing Su Tong coming, the other party took out a copy of the book and read, My disciple. In June of the 2nd year of the holy calendar of Shenzhou, Li Zheng, the prince of Xinwugong, and Ruai Ziliangdong, Yoruo Yanmei, who had done great work in river management, specially ordered his disciples to go to the province, draw up a letter, and give him a cavalry captain and 3,000 silk cloth. The order was given within 3 days. After setting off and regaining consciousness, he returned to his life. The Xinwubai finished reading the book in his hand. Su Tong also received a reminder from the prop book. Ding! The identity task of repairing the river channel has been completed. Following the reminder of the mission, Su Tong looked up and saw that the luck above his head had improved a lot. His official fortune was booming, and he looked prosperous. At this time, the Xinwu guard in front of him had already stepped forward and congratulated. Congratulations to the eldest son, the saint is very happy this time. The eldest son will definitely be favored by the saint when he returns to the capital. You're welcome, I haven't asked you for your name yet. I'm the Xinwu guard, the 12 divine generals, Wu Fan. When Su Tong heard the name, he couldn't help but secretly find it interesting. It was specifically mentioned in his side mission that he wanted to make friends with Wu Fan. As a result, he almost forgot about this task, and Wu Fan actually came to him by himself. What is this called? It takes no effort to get through the iron shoes and find nowhere. I didn't even look for it myself, but someone took the initiative to package it and deliver it to my door. Now that everyone has arrived, why should Su Tong be so polite? Sun Yang, serve tea and cook. Su Tong enthusiastically held Wu Fan's hand. It's rare for Brother Wu to return from Chengdu. Just in time, it's dinner time, let's eat first. To tell you the truth, I have admired Xinwubai's heroic appearance for a long time. Lord Luohu left in a hurry last time, which made me very regretful. Wu Fan actually planned to read out the book and then walk away, but he didn't expect that the prince would be so polite and even hold his hand. Doesn't the prince know that Xinwubai has already gained a bad reputation, not to mention those ministers and officials, who among the Li family doesn't hate him to the core? Several members of the Li family died in the Tianlaozhou prison of their Xinwu guards. It seems like there is a blood feud between the two sides. Thinking of this, Wu Fan couldn't help but become alert in his heart, thinking, could it be that this person wants to make friends with me and find out the true identity of the Xinwu guards? Just as he was thinking about it, Su Tong had already pulled Wu Fan to sit down. Sun Yang dove into the kitchen and soon started to work. Su Tong took Wu Fan to chat under the tree. Wu Fan was very wary of Su Tong at first, but he couldn't resist Su Tong's flattery. Zhou Yu opened the sky with one sword, allowing the younger generation to see the master. The right sentence is to serve the country and the people, and the great chivalrous person. Wu Fan was not mentioned in any sentence, but it made Wu Fan feel particularly comfortable. Wu Fan was a divine guard and a member of the Wu family. Normally, no one in the court would dare to talk to him like this. The only flattery he could hear was the eunuch saying that Lord Wu Fan was handsome, mighty, and had a bright future. Compared with Su Tong, in this sentence, the great chivalrous person serves the country and the people, and his taste is dozens of levels ahead of those eunuchs. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 dishes, Wu Fan saw that it was getting late, and he hurriedly stood up and said, "It was a great pleasure to chat with the prince today, but I still have important things to do in my humble job, and I have to invite someone to the temple, so I don't dare to linger here any longer." "Oh." Su Tong nodded and asked tentatively, "I wonder who it is that actually allows Brother Wu to meet him in person." When Wu Fan heard this, his heart moved slightly, and he sneered secretly, "Humph, you have revealed your foxtail so quickly, and you want to get information from me." But Wu Fan then thought about it, maybe this was an opportunity, he might as well give him a try and see if he really had this intention. So he said with a nonchalant expression, "Haha, he is not an expert, he is just a carpenter. This man is a few years older than you and me, but he has amazingly skillful hands. He is a great master among carpenters. The saint ordered me to take him to Beijing to carve a Buddha statue for the Mingtang." Carpenter. Grand Master. Su Tong's eyes shone when he heard this, and he thought to himself, "Oh, isn't this a coincidence?" Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 644. Sir, why are you leaving? The river channel will be completed soon. Yes, I beg you to stay for a few more days, 3 days, just 3 days. If you stay for 3 more days, we can complete the river channel. Early in the morning, the sky was dark and a cool breeze blew, as if it was going to rain. The post house in Yuyang City was already crowded with people. I don't know who leaked the news and knew that Mr. Qingtian Li Zheng was leaving, so they rushed over. The poor people specially put on clean clothes, supported the old and the young, carried baskets on their shoulders, and gathered in front of the post house. "My lord, please stay and drink this glass of wine before leaving. Sir, we will never forget your kindness in this life." The streets, which were not spacious to begin with, are now filled with densely packed figures at a glance. The officials of the post house were standing guard in front of the gate, sweating profusely. The last time these people were so irritable was when they gathered at the magistrate's office. If a stampede occurs, the consequences are not something they can afford. There are too many hard times in Yuyang City. Finally, a great master from Qingtian came, who was dedicated to the people. How could he not be loved by the people? Although this great master manages the river, in the hearts of these people, this is much more effective than some bullshit prefect or blind governor. When he was around, those officials who were usually arrogant and domineering became kind-hearted. Those officials who were lying on their backs were all working diligently, as if they were different people. In fact, this is not entirely because of Su Tong. I believe these officials got the news from Zhang Zhen early in the morning and knew that Shen Wubai was in Yuyang. Under the nose of Shen Wubai, they dared to make mistakes, and naturally they were as well behaved as sheep. It's just that the people didn't know about this, so they attributed all the credit to Su Tong. After finally living a peaceful life, it has only been a few days, but the great master Qingtian is about to leave. Seeing more and more people and more excitement, the officials of the post house felt their hearts in their throats. "Open the door." At this time, Su Tong's voice suddenly came from behind. "Master Li." The post officer looked back and saw Su Tong standing behind him in neat official clothes. Behind him, Guo Yi and others were holding the carriage, looking ready to set off. When the post officer saw this, instead of feeling relaxed, he became even more nervous. "Master Li, please don't go out. These people have no sense of propriety. If they hurt you..." The post officer had good intentions. After all, so many people crowded in, even an Iron Man would be crushed. If someone among them is up to no good and takes advantage of the chaos, he might be able to bury his entire family with him. "Humph, if I don't go out, can you stop them?" "This." The post officer glanced back. Even through the gate, he could clearly feel the huge momentum behind the gate. It was like a tide. When people think of that scene, they feel numb and dizzy. "Let go. Don't worry, they won't harm me," Su Tong said as he stepped forward, stretched out his hand and opened the door. Buzz. As the door slowly opened, the post officer's heart suddenly rose to his throat. But what surprised him was that when the people outside saw Su Tong's neat official clothes, everyone suddenly became quiet. Su Tong did not stop and strode into the crowd. Seeing the pair of eyes staring at him full of hope, Su Tong took a deep breath, and many of Li Zheng's thoughts could not help but appear in his mind. Serving as an official for one term will benefit a country. In the prosperous Tang dynasty, when all the nations came to court, if I were to serve as an official in the dynasty, I would definitely do it with the heart of the world and the heart of one person. Gradually, Su Tong's thoughts seemed to be integrated into Li Zheng's memory. Facing the eyes of the people in front of him, his expression gradually became serious. "Master Li." Finally, someone couldn't help but want to speak, trying to persuade him not to leave. But just as he opened his mouth, Su Tong stretched out his hand to interrupt him. He straightened his clothes and bowed his hands to the many people in front of him. "Master Li." Seeing Su Tong bowing his hands and bowing, All the people's eyes turned red, and they slowly backed away to make way for Li Zheng. At this time, the weather was not beautiful, and raindrops poured down. Su Tong looked at the big raindrops, turned around slowly, and bowed to the villagers around him again. "It's raining, folks, go back quickly, go back quickly." Bah! However, in the face of Su Tong's shouts, the people had no intention of dispersing. Instead, someone suddenly tore off a patch from his clothes. Seeing this, the others followed suit, tearing off pieces of their clothes, tying each other into knots, lifting them up with a bamboo pole, and forming a big umbrella to cover Su Tong's head. "Your Excellency used to protect us people, let us protect you today." An old man holding an umbrella shouted loudly. For a moment, the huge one-man umbrella was opened, and everyone escorted Su Tong forward. At this moment, Su Tong suddenly felt that the rainwater falling on his mouth was a bit salty. Guo Yi and others who followed behind were also deeply touched by this scene. It turns out that ordinary people will never forget the people who once protected them. Looking at the one-man umbrella erected in the swaying wind and rain, my heart was touched as if I was struck by lightning. The followers always felt that the prince was so stupid. Why did he give away all the money that was given to him in vain, and there was not even a piece of silver left around him? Until this moment, looking at the people around them who were constantly sending eggs, fruits, and dry food, the shame in their hearts made them want to find a crack in the ground to crawl in. "Master Li, if you come back one day, we will wait for you here," an old man shouted. "Master Li, we are waiting for your return." Suddenly, in the huge Yang city, shouts drowned out the dull thunder in the sky. Zhang Zhen, the governor of Yuzhou in the distance, and others were all shocked by the scene in front of them. Seeing the people spontaneously getting out of the way and holding umbrellas to see Su Tong off, I felt relieved but also a little sour. I am the governor of Yuzhou and the largest officer in Yuzhou. But when I leave, can there be such a scene? After questioning himself, Zhang Zhen began to feel guilty. Although the common people do not know the truth, they are not fools. When that day comes, the person who gave him the shaft will be thankful if no one throws stones at his carriage. The common people arrived at the city gate before finally stopping. The 10,000 people umbrella was also taken by Su Tong from the old man's hand. He gently stroked the pudding on the umbrella with his palm, bowed deeply to the people, held the 10,000 people umbrella, and resolutely boarded the carriage. Gradually drifting away, gradually disappearing from people's sight. The carriage moved slowly. Su Tong sat on the carriage and looked at the 10,000 people umbrella and couldn't help but sigh. Originally I just wanted to make a fool of myself, but I didn't expect that this play would actually benefit me a lot. It is true that life is like a play, and play is like life. Su Tong casually put the 10,000 people umbrella into his prop book, just as a souvenir. But what he didn't expect was that when the 10,000 people umbrella was included in the prop book, the prop book actually gave a series of entries. This thing turned out to be a prop card. Wanyi umbrella. Those who work for everyone should not be allowed to freeze to death in the wind and snow. Active skill 1, thousands of fires. Holding this umbrella, all the wishes of all families will be fulfilled. All laws cannot be approached, all evils cannot be hurt, all gods are prohibited, and there are no taboos. Duration, 60 seconds. Note, this item is invalid after use. The explanation given in the prop booklet is very vague and does not directly explain the effect of this item. However, judging from the entry, it should be a treasure that can restrain the gods. Well, maybe this thing will come in handy in the future. Su Tong took a deep breath and began to think about the future use of his item. At this time, the carriage slowly came to a halt, and the 3-year-old man sitting on the carriage lifted the curtain. "Your Majesty." Su Tong raised his head and saw 2 people squeezing into the carriage one after another. "Hey, I thought you couldn't get out." The person who came was none other than Qin Wei, Wu Fan. In fact, Wu Fan originally didn't want to go with Su Tong, but then he thought that this would be an opportunity for him to monitor this person, so he changed his mind and agreed to go back to the divine capital with them. As for the other man, he should be the carpenter Wu Fan mentioned. "You are Mr. Li, Cao Men Yuan Shushi, greeting Mr. Li." The man looked excited. In fact, he instinctively resisted Wu Fan's proposal to take him to the capital of the gods. Even if it meant practicing Buddhism in the saint's Mingtang, he was extremely unwilling to do so. But when he heard that he could ride in the same carriage with Mr. Li to the capital of the gods, Yuan Shushi instantly wiped away his original resistance, and his whole mood lifted. He immediately made a cross-hand salute towards Su Tong and bowed deeply. However, after waiting for a moment, there was no response from Mr. Li. Yuan Shushi couldn't help but feel a little doubtful in his heart. He raised his brows slightly and saw that Mr. Li looked handsome and had extraordinary bearing. But he didn't know why, but his eyes were straight, staring at himself. At this time, even Wu Fan on the side felt a little strange. He thought to himself, it is rumored that this man competed with Gu Pei Yuan for a male favorite in the tea house. Could it be that he really likes men's style? Thinking of this, Wu Fan suddenly remembered the way Li Zheng held his hand to eat that day, and he couldn't help but tighten his hips. Su Tong seemed to realize that he had lost his composure, and quickly took Yuan Shushi's arm and gestured for him to sit down with a smile. Then his expression was calm, making it difficult to see any emotion or anger. But who could know that the moment Su Tong saw Yuan Shushi, his mind couldn't help buzzing, and he couldn't help but think of the beef offal soup restaurant outside the Drum Tower, and the group of lonely ghosts who appeared in front of the soup restaurant on time every night. This lonely soul who has been waiting for thousands of years is now sitting in front of him alive. This is the first time he has heard his name, Yuan Shushi. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 645. Hizzy. It was midsummer, and not a single shadow could be seen on the official road. On the contrary, in the shade of the trees on the roadside, a group of people were lying drowsily under the trees. Hey, ha! Guo Yi waved his fist, and his body showed a somewhat weird posture. This posture made the muscles on Guo Yi's body tremble in a strange pattern, as if an invisible hammer was beating his body. Average muscles. Guo Yi was born into a poor man and relied on begging for a living when he was young. Later, he followed his martial arts master and learned martial arts and darts. Step by step, he got to where he is today, relying on perseverance and diligence. These things are his only advantage in competing with those nobles and nobles. But later he gradually realized that he was wrong. Whether it was martial arts or foreign learning, if you wanted to achieve something, you had to rely on accumulating a lot of wealth and money. I practiced diligently, practicing in the summer and in the winter. It took me 2 years to achieve any success. As for those disciples of powerful families, they only need a bottle of medicinal wine to catch up with them in less than 3 months. Gradually, as he got older, he became a little successful as a taibao. He only had a hidden injury and no possibility of further progress. Only then did he join Prince Gong's palace as a bodyguard. Unexpectedly, after meeting the prince and healing all the hidden wounds in his body with a pot of bastard soup, he also had the possibility of a breakthrough. Now Guo Yi didn't dare to slack off. Whenever he had time and others were resting, he would practice boxing desperately. Sweat dripped into his eyes, and the aching feeling in his muscles made Guo Yi grit his teeth in pain. He could feel the numbness and fatigue radiating from the muscles all over his body. This feeling of being close to the limit made people dizzy, but as Guo Yi gritted his teeth and persisted, suddenly, a trace of strange heat emerged from his body. As soon as this heat appeared, Guo Yi's spirit suddenly lifted. It's Yuan Yang Beiyu. A trace of warm heat slowly penetrated into the muscles. Guo Yi seemed to be able to hear the subtle trembling of the muscles and bones at this moment. The soreness and fatigue quietly dissipated, replaced by a more energetic feeling. Energy. Hey. Feeling the power return to his body, Guo Yi's two pairs of copper bell-sized eyes revealed a burning gaze. He grabbed a tree trunk as thick as a bowl and straightened his waist. There was no movement at all. He just flicked his wrist and made a click sound, and the big tree broke immediately. Wow, boom! The tree trunk fell to the ground with a huge roar. At this moment, the followers who had been sleeping in the shade of the tree were trembling with fright. They all pulled out their swords, stood up and took a look, only to find that the tree had fallen. For a while, everyone was not surprised. Along the way, whether it was day or night, as long as he was resting, Boss Guo was practicing boxing, and it was common for him to occasionally break something. Master of martial arts. Not far away, Wu Fan raised his head and took a look. The sweat on Guo Yi's body was like steaming mist, and he couldn't help but raise his brows slightly. At this speed, he will be able to enter the master realm before waiting for Luoyang. Martial arts master, that's enviable. Yuan Shushi sat aside, holding a small wood carving in his hand. Although he was talking, the carving knife in his hand did not stop for a moment. After a while, he completed the wood carving and placed it beside him. He looked at it and finished it. There are 28 wood carvings placed neatly, and every face on the wood carvings is exactly the same as Guo Yi. Just like a smaller version of Guo Yi, even his eyes, movements, and even the changes in muscle lines are full of charm. And these 28 wood carvings exactly correspond to Guo Yi's boxing technique. There is indeed nothing to say about Yuan Shushi's carving skills, but what made Su Tong depressed was that he privately took out the money mold and showed it to Yuan Shushi to see if he could repair it. As a result, Yuan Shushi held the money model and studied it for a long time, then frowned and explained to Su Tong, "This thing can be repaired, but you need to find a coffin board made of the same material as the money model. The material of the money mold is a special kind of dark wood made from locust wood. This kind of wood is rarely seen, let alone being made into a coffin, which undoubtedly adds to the difficulty. Digging a grave privately is a serious crime of beheading. Even if Su Tong is the heir, if this matter is known to others, he will not be able to escape a heavy punishment." "Okay, I'll think of a solution for this matter." After hearing this, Su Tong put the money model away depressedly, and could only think of a solution. "You are so good at carving." Sun Yang stirred the soup in the pot and looked at the wooden carvings from time to time. "Not even close." Yuan Shushi looked at the wood carvings, but it seemed as if he saw a failed work, and he casually planned to throw the wood carvings into the bonfire as firewood. "Hey! If you don't want it, give it to me. It would be a pity to burn it." Seeing Yuan Shushi casually throw it into the bonfire, Sun Yang immediately picked out the branch, patted the ashes on it, and then spoke after checking that it was not burned. Okay. Yuan Shushi smiled bitterly and shook his head, indicating that he could give these wood carvings to Sun Yang, which could be regarded as a reward for Sun Yang taking care of him during this period of time. "Sun Yang, you have made a profit. If this set of wood carvings were taken to Luoyang, it would be worth at least 3,000 taels of silver." Wu Fan joked from the side. But Sun Yang wiped off the dust on the wood carving nonchalantly. When she heard the value of this thing, she was not surprised at all. She just said, "I don't care how much silver it is worth. I won't sell it even if it's 30,000 taels. I just like it, this thing." "You really think they are interested in the wood carvings, but they are interested in the living people over there." Su Tong squatted aside and said jokingly while smoking a hookah. As soon as these words came out, the three of them burst into laughter, causing Sun Yang's face to turn red and white. "Master, please don't make fun of me." He, then go and bring him soup." Su Tong pointed to the pot of torta soup in the pot. This torta soup is naturally the best torta soup made by the group of wealthy businessmen in front of the Cheng Huang temple who raised funds. Su Tong had kept them in his prop book before and was not afraid of letting them go bad. This thing is a great tonic. If it is eaten by Guo Yi after practicing boxing, it will just replenish the energy consumed by his body and help him speed up his breakthrough to the level of a great master. It's a certified script. This kind of top-notch bastard soup, if replaced by an ordinary copy, wouldn't have such strong resources. Su Tong sighed in his heart. This was the second time he entered the world of certified scripts, and this time he experienced it even more intensely. The quality and resources of the certified world were simply several times higher than those of the ordinary script world. By the way, Brother Wu, we are going to Luoyang, the capital of God, soon. I wonder if there is anything interesting in Luoyang. There are so many fun places, Tanhua Building, Jingxiu Square, and the Six Arts Museum. When Wu Fan talked about Luoyang, he, who had always been a man of few words, began to talk. There is no need to say more about Tanhua Building. I don't know how many talented people have broken their heads and want to go in and explore. When you are away from home, if you say you haven't been there, I'm sorry, but you won't be able to enter the cultural circle. Jingxi Yufang is a neighborhood where dragons and fish are mixed, including Kunlun slaves and Turkic beauties. In short, there is everything. Finally, there is the Six Arts Hall. When Wu Fan talked about the Six Arts Hall, his eyes couldn't help but look forward to it. It is a gathering place for masters of etiquette, music, archery, imperial education, calligraphy, and several other schools. If workers, farmers, and craftsmen can be recognized by the Liu Yiguan, they can even hold important positions in the Ministry of Household Affairs directly with the certificates from the Liu Yiguan. This shows how important the Six Arts Museum is. In other words, even the big exam that takes place every 3 years is not as reliable as the Six Arts Hall certification. Yuan Shushi on the side can testify to this. Because Yuan Shushi had been recognized by the Liu Yi Museum, it was precisely for this reason that the saint appointed him to major in Mingtang Buddha statues. Of course, there is another point that Wu Fan did not mention, that is, the recommendation letter from their Wu family is more useful than the Six Arts Hall. Otherwise, why would there be so many people trying to become disciples of the Wu family? Su Tong kept these places in mind. After everyone had eaten, they waited until the sun set before continuing to set off. Naturally, I couldn't make elixirs along the way, but I didn't feel bored either. Because Su Tong discovered something interesting. That is, there are some signs of compatibility between Zhou Niang and Guo Yi's luck. To put it bluntly, they have the appearance of husband and wife. It's just that Guo Yi, a tough guy, is like a straight man. Several times, Wednesday's mother took the initiative to bring him food and drinks, but she almost screamed, "I don't care about you." As a result, Guo Yi turned his head, put down the bowl and chopsticks, and continued to practice boxing. This made Zhou Niang grit her teeth in anger, but she had no temper at all. But if you want to say that Guo Yi doesn't feel anything at all, that's not right. Su Tong discovered that this Guo Yi had thick eyebrows and big eyes, and he was good looking, but his eyes always liked to look at Sun Yang secretly. "Bah, you look like a slut at first glance." Seeing Guo Yi's coquettish appearance, Su Tong felt anxious for him. The motorcade stopped along the way, and it took another half a month before it arrived outside Luoyang City. Wu Fan Ke took Yuan Shushi and said goodbye to Su Tong. "Your Majesty, let's go to the Imperial Inn or the official inn next." Guo Yi stepped forward and asked Su Tong. His voice was upright and he looked full of energy. The temples on his head were bulging high, and his figure was bullier than before. When the sun shone on his skin was even whiter than that of Zhou Niang beside him. If you meet a discerning person, you will know at a glance that this must be the characteristic of a martial arts master. The post houses are also divided into levels. The imperial post is also called the residence hall. Those foreign relatives of the emperor can stay in the residence hall. The post house is specially used for officials to live. Without Guoyi saying this, Su Tong really hadn't considered this matter, but now that Guoyi said this, Su Tong had to think about it. I was very embarrassed because of my identity. Ordinarily, with his status as Prince Gong's son, he can be regarded as the grandson of the emperor, so he should live in Xinyuan. But today is not the world of their Li family, but the world of Zhou Wu. Now that this old woman is in her old age, it is a time when her suspicion becomes more and more serious. In Li Zheng's memory, this empress was a master who could kill even his own son. He went to live in the royal palace to remind the empress that the Li family also had an outstanding grandson waiting for her. Will Emperor Li's family be restored? He could clearly remember that when he got the identity mask, there was a line of small red characters on the mask. Stay away from the royal family. This is a proposition. I want to protect myself wisely, but I also want to obtain an official position at this critical moment and gain greater convenience. I can only bow my head honestly. Therefore, living in the post house is undoubtedly the best choice, but there are many people in the post house. This is the sacred capital of Luoyang, not the old city of Luoyang. The center of the empire, at the feet of the saint. Most of the people in the post house are officials from other places. If you live in the post house, you might get hacked by someone secretly. If you say that you are liaising with external envoys and winning people's hearts, you can't wash yourself away even if you jump into the Yellow River. After thinking about it for a while, Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly. Don't go anywhere, enter the palace. Ah! As soon as these words came out, Guoyi and others couldn't help but be shocked. If the saint didn't summon him, he would go straight to the palace and not be able to enter the gate. But Su Tong was determined to take a gamble. For some things, if you say everything is fine once you open the door, you are afraid that if you leave something untouched, if someone provokes you, you will instantly fall into passivity. Since it was the empress who ordered her to return to Luoyang, it would make her feel guilty if she was timid. Furthermore, Su Tong looked around calmly. When Wu Fan left with Yuan Shushi, Su Tong was vaguely aware of the looks from around him. I believe that by this time, the empress already knew that she had arrived in Luoyang, and she might even have someone monitoring her every move. It is precisely because of this that he has to go to see the empress first, and no matter where he lives in the future, he must have an explanation. Therefore, Su Tong decided to go to the palace first, no matter what time it was. Seeing that the prince had said so, Guoyi could only nod his head and led Su Tong straight to the Yingtian gate of the imperial palace. Yingtianmen is a huge building complex in the shape of a gate that is connected by a gate tower, and corridors between them. It is more like a huge palace building than a door. Anyone who stands under the building and looks at the majestic and powerful gate in front of him will feel deeply shocked from the bottom of his heart. Before Su Tong's carriage approached, Su Tong got out of the carriage and motioned to Guoyi and the others to wait here. Then he straightened his official clothes and walked towards the door. When he walked to the gate, Su Tong slowly raised his head and used his life icon to look at it. He saw the Yingtian gate, a red light rising into the sky, and 5 phoenixes entrenched on the tower gate. The phoenix wings were spread high, overwhelming the world. My luck was suddenly reduced in front of this building. Buzz. At this time, the door on the right side of Yingtianmen was opened, and a female official came out with a group of guards. He ran straight to Su Tong, thinking that Su Tong was leaning slightly behind him, and then said, "Your Majesty has a decree. Prince Qianli is waiting for the decree in the Yulong Pavilion in heaven. The so-called paradise is not the one in the west, otherwise Su Tong would draw his sword and run away at this time. The paradise here refers to the Tongtian Pagoda behind the Mingtang of Ziwei City, also known as the Tongtian Pagoda. The wooden building more than 300 meters high is a rare treasure. There is a giant Buddha inside, which is said to be as tall as the Lucena Buddha in Longmen Mountain. One can imagine how big this tower is. Su Tong followed the female officer, walked through the corridor garden, and came to the foot of the tower. He couldn't help but raise his head and look around. After comparing his mind with the Luoyang paradise in reality, he found out. Comparing the restored and rebuilt paradise in reality with the one in front of me, the difference between the two is as huge as clouds and mud. Buzz. At this time, the door in front of me was pushed open, and a light laughter came from inside. "Long time no see, Your Majesty, you are well." Su Tong raised his head and took a closer look. It was Luo Hu, one of the 12 commanders of the Xinwu Guard whom he had seen in Yuyang City. "Sorry, today is a bit short. I have been staring at the computer all day, and I couldn't organize my thoughts. My eyes really can't hold it anymore. Let's transition this chapter first." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 646. It has only been more than a month since Luo Hu had a hasty farewell to Yuyang City last time. But Luo Hu's energy and spirit were obviously aging a lot. The whole person seemed to have entered old age from middle age, and the hair on the temples around his ears had turned white. Seemingly seeing the surprise in Su Tong's eyes, Luo Hu didn't take it seriously and said, "Everyone will grow old one day, and no one can be an exception." As he spoke, Luo Hu looked Su Tong up and down. "It's good that you can come directly to see the saint. Go in and be careful what you say." Luo Hu's words may be understood as encouragement, but Su Tong heard the meaning of warning. "Thank you for reminding me, sir." Su Tong nodded and followed the female officer into the door. In the dormitory hall, the cloud-top sandalwood is used as the beam, the crystal jade is used as the lamp, the pearl is used as the curtain, and the fan gold is used as the pillar base. At first glance, Su Tong felt like Grandma Lu entering the Grand View Garden when looking at the main hall in front of her. Both eyes didn't know where to look. The two dragons on the eaves, with golden scales and jade beads, are vivid and vivid, as if they are about to rise into the sky. Their charm is calm and majestic, showing the majesty of the royal family. In the center of the hall is the Oriental Medicine Buddha carved from white marble. The Buddha statue is kind and solemn, with a solemn expression. In the four corners of the hall, there are the four heavenly kings, with domes above their heads and tall and lifelike bodies, which make people feel solemn. This way. Under the guidance of the female officer, Su Tong walked up the stairs, and bursts of ritual music could be heard in his ears. Across the gauze curtain, musicians on both sides played the piano, and girls rang bells and struck chimes, and the music sounded melodious. The sandalwood was lit on the platform base, and the smoke was lingering. In the building, the palace ladies shuttled back and forth, and the divine guards in armor were stationed almost every 5 steps and 1 sentry every 10 steps. Good guys, there are all great masters, and some of them have even entered the Tao. I believe there must be more powerful beings in this palace. Su Tong followed the female officer all the way, and he was stared at by countless pairs of eyes. As long as he had the slightest evil thoughts, he might not be able to get out of here today. "We're here, Your Majesty, please wait here." After the palace maid said this, she turned and left without even looking at Su Tong. After all, he is Prince Gong's son, and he can be regarded as the Empress's grandson. But at this moment, even a little female official doesn't pay attention to him. For a moment, Su Tong couldn't help but smile secretly, which shows how embarrassing the Li family's current position is. After the female officer left, Su Tong raised his head and looked around the study room. Compared with the wealth and grandeur outside, this place seemed much simpler and simpler. After Su Tong glanced at it, he simply stood there, looking at his nose, looking at his heart, as if he was in deep concentration. In Li Zheng's memory, He had never seen this grandma, and his father, Prince Gong, did not allow him to ask about the empress. In his memory, whenever Prince Gong heard the name of this empress, there would be unconcealable fear in his eyes. But since I have chosen to face the Holy Spirit, I am fully prepared and open-minded, and I am not afraid of what the empress will think of me. If he confessed like this and the empress still caused trouble for him, I don't mind making him turn upside down either. However, time passed by minute, and Su Tong stood there motionless. An hour passed by, and the rumored empress never appeared. After about a while, Su Tong's ears twitched slightly, and he saw the female officer who had brought him here come in again. Seeing that Su Tong was still standing in his original position, the female official raised her eyebrows slightly. "Your Majesty is tired. I want you to go back to the imperial post to rest early. There is no need to come to pay your respects later. I will hear from you in a few days." When Su Tong heard this, he first looked up at the luck above his head and found that his official luck had not changed. He knew that he had made the right bet this time, so he handed over his hand to thank the female official and followed the female official out of heaven. Not far from the paradise, Su Tong suddenly felt that someone was peeping at him from behind, and he did not make any attempt to hide it. That kind of indifferent and deep look came from heaven. Is it the Empress? Or someone else? Su Tong subconsciously wanted to turn back, but this thought was firmly suppressed by his reason. No matter who he was, it would be bad for him to look back. He immediately strode out of the palace gate. Buzz. When Su Tong walked out of the palace gate, it was already dark outside. "Your Majesty." Guo Yi and others were relieved when they saw Su Tong coming out. It was getting late, and they were also worried about whether Su Tong could come out of Ziwei City alive. After all, the hatred between the Empress and the Li family was not as big as usual. "It's okay, let's go to Huanji." Su Tong got on the carriage and signaled Guo Yi and the others to go to the royal station. He was sitting in the car on the way, thinking about the Empress's thoughts. Calling myself back to Luoyang, but deliberately missing her. Is she beating herself up or testing myself? Thinking of this, Su Tong couldn't help complaining about Li Zhang. "Li Zhang, you said it's not good for you to be a happy son, but you want to be an official. What is the situation of your Li family? Don't you have any idea in your heart? The royal post house is actually not far from Ziwei City." When a group of people arrived, they found someone waiting for them outside the gate of the post house. "Greetings to the Crown Prince. His Majesty has already sent a decree to us, asking the Crown Prince to live here with peace of mind, and leave the carriage and horses to us to arrange the journey." The person who came forward to speak was an official of the post house. Su Tong walked out of the carriage and took a look. The official looked like he was in his 40s, but he didn't even have a beard. He spoke in a sharp voice and was dressed in a 5th-grade scarlet color. The round-collared robe is almost the same as the official uniform worn by Su Tong. "Father-in-law, your surname is noble. The old slave wears Yud, and the prince just calls the miscellaneous family Yud. Oh, Eunuch Dai is so polite. I hope Eunuch Dai won't take it personally." Su Tong took out a piece of silver and gave it to Eunuch Dai. Eunuch Dai quietly put the silver into his pocket, with a brighter smile on his face. He led Su Tong and others into the imperial post, and specially gave Su Tong a piece of silver. A quiet private courtyard was arranged. There are 3 rooms in the small courtyard, just enough for Sun Yang to have 1 room and Su Tong to have 1 room. As for Guo Yi and others, they went to the datang shop in the other room. "Headmaster, do you want Jixiang to go?" De Ya has developed a habit of telling Jixiang to go out and explore information without Su Tong's orders. But this time Su Tong signaled not to use it. He jumped onto the roof and looked around the huge city of Luoyang. Under the Minjian Kimen, one can see the energy surging in Luoyang City. The 5 colors are like the waves of the tide, and the vague shadows of gods are patrolling back and forth on the city. This is not the late Qing dynasty, nor is it Yuyang County. There are countless experts in crouching tiger, hidden dragon, and if they go out to practice auspicious Taoism, they may be caught and burned. Su Tong's words obviously had a great impact on Jixiang. But this is the truth. A visit to the palace today made him deeply realize the unfathomable depth behind the high walls of the palace. I am new here and my identity is sensitive. There might be someone waiting for me somewhere to fall into a trap. What's more, last time in Yuyang, Luo Hu had probably noticed that Ji Xiang had immediately controlled the rats. If he tried this trick again, it would be nothing new. Although my official luck is good at the moment, my status is too embarrassing. Even if I rise to prominence, the probability of holding a false position is very high. How can I make my luck better? After Su Tong watched for a moment, his heart suddenly moved and he called out his prop book. I saw a prop card in the prop book. Josie's Kiss. This prop card has only one ability, Josie's Blessing Kiss. Active Skill 1, Josie's Kiss of Blessing. It consumes 200 script points. After activation, you will receive a blessing kiss from Josie, and then receive a random blessing buff. Duration, 24 hours. Cooling time, 7 days. This prop card is a reward from the previous script world, but to some extent, it may be a gift that Josie gave herself. Since I am idle, I might as well give it a try and see what effect this prop card has. After all, a randomly obtained blessing might bring good luck. Thinking of this, Su Tong's heart moved slightly and he chose to activate. The moment the prop card was activated, white holy light suddenly appeared in front of Su Tong. Enveloped in the holy light, Qiao Qian's pure face appeared. She opened her arms towards Su Tong and kissed him on the forehead. Ding! You received Josie's blessing kiss. Ding! You get a random blessing, an unintentional blessing. Following the prompt, a hickey that was difficult to see with the naked eye appeared on Su Tong's forehead, and at the same time, there were also some strange changes in his luck. Su Tongming looked at the strange door and saw that due to his luck, large willow trees were growing. What kind of luck is this? Seeing this, Su Tong couldn't help but murmur in his heart. He didn't like this green feeling, but fortunately he didn't have a wife. Wuxin, Yangliu. Su Tong thought about it for a while and remembered the idiom, if you don't insert a willow without intention, the willow will come naturally.